Special Operations, Covert Ops, Espionage, The Team House, with your hosts, Jack Murphy and David Park.
Hey folks, welcome to episode 276 of The Team House. I'm Jack, here with Dave. Our guest on tonight's show is Adam Gamal. He is the author of The Unit with Kelly Kennedy, My Life Fighting Terrorists as one of America's most secret military operatives. Adam is one of the very few people we've ever had on this show under alias whose identity is being censored for some valid reasons that you'll probably be able to pick up on as this interview goes on. Adam, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
So let's start at the beginning. You are a immigrant. Can you tell us a little bit about like how you grew up overseas and sort of what your immigration story was?
Yep, absolutely. So I was born in Egypt, went to school in Egypt. A year or two after high school, I went to law school. So law school in Egypt is after high school, not after college. Europe and a lot of other countries other than the US, they have that. And when I was in college, Egypt was still under some sort of a martial law, just because of the assassination of President Sadat in 1981. So we had a college professor who was like the guy with a lot of wisdom, and he's like, hey, by the way, whatever law you study in here, most likely you'll never practice because we're going to be under laws of emergency for a while. So that I have a light bulb just goes on in my head, and I'm like, well, it's time for me to leave, to go somewhere else. I had a lot of back and forth fighting with the Muslim Brotherhood, running against them in student body in college. I got beaten by them a few times. I was like, you know what, maybe I should leave. So I wanted to, initially I was like, okay, I'll go to somewhere in Europe. It's easier to travel to Europe than to come to the US. The US was very hard to get a visa, to get a student visa and an immigration status. So I went to the embassy of Austria. They said, no, we're not giving you a visa. So I went to the embassy of France. That was around Desert Storm, right after Desert Storm. So France was not giving visas to anybody to travel outside of Egypt at that time. So in the way back, there is a US consulate. So it was three of us trying to travel. That one guy was like, hey man, we can just stop by the American consulate. And I was like, well, these other two countries didn't give us a visa. What makes you think the US will give us a visa? So he's like, well, nothing to lose. We'll just stop by and get an application. So I get an application, fill it out. Then I go to go for the interview. The lady was like, you're supposed to have like, bank statements shows that you have money, you have properties, you have all of these things. So I go and I have nothing, honestly. I didn't even have the money to pay for the visa. So I went for the interview. The lady was like, hey, you're supposed to have, do you have any of those things? I said, well, the application doesn't say I'm supposed to bring any of these things. You didn't tell me. Nobody said anything. So she's like, well, if I let you go and come back, would you bring it? I said, yeah, absolutely. So she's, when can you bring it? I said, whenever you want me to come back. She's like, tomorrow. I said, this is not the US, it's Egypt. It's going to take me 2 days. Can I come the day after tomorrow? So she's like, yeah, you can come the day after tomorrow. So I go, come back in 2 days with one of those small bags that people carry with nothing in it, like literally nothing. I walk in, and the lady asked me, did you apply for a visa before? I said, yeah, I was here 2 days ago, and I'm coming to submit the documents you guys asked for. She's like, do you have it? I said, yeah, it's in this bag. You want to see it? She's like, no. And she's like, she asked for the equivalent of, I think, $3.50. That was the fees for the visa. That time, when I was going, my brother gave me the money. And he's like, hey, you never know. Just take the money with you. So she's like, it was like 29 Egyptian pounds. So I gave her 29 Egyptian pounds, and she's like, give me your passport. I go in the afternoon to pick up my passport with a visa on it. 2 weeks after, I was in New York City. So that's the first step.
And what kind of visa did you come here on? Like, what was your game plan?
So I didn't have a game plan. I was like, let me just get the fuck out of here. So initially, they give you they give you a tourist visa. My plan was I'm going to come on the tourist visa, apply for a student visa, and change my visa. So I went to Hunter College to learn English as a second language, and then you can go through that to apply to change your visa status from tourist visa to student visa. So that's what I did. But I didn't have a game plan, honestly. I was like, you know what, I'm just coming. I borrowed $500 from my sister. I didn't have any money. I didn't speak any English. I landed in New York City, in JFK, not far from here. Took the subway. It took me like an hour to get out of the subway because I didn't know how to get out of the subway. Spent the first night in the YMCA. Couldn't dial a phone to call a friend to come and pick me up. Some junkie guy standing by the bathroom saw me going to that phone like 10 times. Think he got sick and tired of seeing me. That phone number I have did not have 1 in front of it with the area code. So I'm dialing the phone number, somebody in Jersey. And just the operator said something in English I didn't understand. And I'm like, what the fuck? He gives me my quarter back. Finally, that guy was like, hey man, let me get this number. So the guy took the number, he dialed the number. I called the friend, it was like 2 o'clock in the morning by then. A guy who was a Boy Scout with me when I was in Egypt. I tell him where I'm at. He's like, don't leave. Just go back to your room, lock the door, and put the bed behind the door.
He's like, what are you? Yeah.
Just don't move.
Yeah.
Next day he came and picked me up and took me to a place where a lot of immigrants live in there. So slept on the floor with no mattress, nothing. I was just on the carpet for the first 3 months. And then I started learning English and I started doing things. And then here I am talking to you guys.
What was the culture shock like?
So it was huge for a few reasons. Number one, I came in July and it was fucking raining. I'm like, man, it doesn't rain in Egypt in the summer. Number two, the year before it was the movie Pretty Woman. So I see Richard Gere, Julia Roberts, the limo. So I'm coming here and I'm like, I'm coming here to see all of these great things.
Right.
I land and I'm like, no limos, no Julia Roberts, nobody. So it was huge. And then I was terrified, honestly. I didn't understand what anybody was saying.
Yeah.
And then the YMCA in Egypt is a decent place to stay at for students. Obviously, the YMCA here was not the nicest place to stay. I was hiding my $500 in my shoes because I was terrified. And then then you come, honestly, and it's not like what you think. You think the U.S. is that clean everywhere, nice everywhere, beautiful everywhere. Well, some areas, as you guys would know, that not what you would think.
Right.
Right.
But yeah, that's the thing. Then there is another cultural shock where in Egypt, for example, police officers, guys that you don't talk to. Mm-hmm. Here, actually, the guy who helped me to get out of the subway station was a police officer. He was very kind, very nice. The guy who helped me to dial the phone number was a junkie. Again, was really nice. So you start seeing that people helping you without you having any connection with them. So that's the positive side of the cultural shock.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so you got your student visa, started going to school here, and how did things start to evolve for you over the next couple of years?
So you get your student visa, you work. So I kind of like, I pumped gas in gas stations. So New Jersey, like you said in your book, it's I think the only state with full service gas stations.
Yeah.
So I'm the guy standing pumping gas. I worked in a bakery, delivered bread to hotels like super early in the morning. So my days, some days would start like from 2 o'clock in the morning to go deliver like cakes and bread to hotels. Finish that, work in a ladies sportswear store in Bayonne, New Jersey. Finish that, then go to school to learn English.
Wow.
From like 5 till, like from 6 till 9 o'clock. Then those days we'll keep going. Then Hunter College was expensive, so I moved to another community college in Jersey. Again, doing all of these different odd jobs. I moved, I think, like 11 times between different houses in the first like 2-3 years. One day I'm working in a store and an army recruiter walks in. The guy dressed nice, looks cool, and they give you this pre-ASVAB, like a 10-minute test. And he's like, man, if you take this, you can, and you pass, then you can join the army and we'll pay for your college.
So he just came in cold calling with like this.
He's just walking around.
Yeah.
At that time, I did not have my green card yet.
Yeah.
So I could not join the army. Obviously, I didn't tell the guy that, but I took the test, the pre-test. Then I kept the number, I kept everything. Then I lived in Jersey City, in Bayonne, New Jersey, between those areas. And like any immigrant, like they go to where people who look like you are there.
The community.
The community.
Yeah.
So there is a mosque in Jersey City. So a lot of people are like, hey, you can go there and people will help you. Mm-hmm. So the blind sheikh from the first World Trade Center bombing
Yeah.
was there. So I'm like, I left the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, and then I come here, and that guy is sitting there. He was not doing the sermon or anything, but he was just there.
Yeah.
So after a Friday sermon, he's sitting down and talking. I was like, well, let me just sit and see what the guy has to say. And people sitting and asking him questions. And I'm like, let me just see what like that guy with all of this wisdom, what he's gonna say and what people are gonna ask him. So one guy, I think it was the first or second question, one guy was like, I want to ask something. Is oral sex forbidden in Islam or not? So the guy talks, and I'm like, so now you have this opportunity to get from this wise guy the answer to how you're going to go to heaven. And you're asking him that. So I put in the book what the answer was. And then I was like, you know what? Maybe I'm just sitting in the wrong place. Right across the street from that, honestly, was a recruiting station. By then, I have gotten my green card. So I went to the recruiting station. And I said, hey, I'm here. I want to join the Navy. And an Army guy met me. And he's like, why do you want to join the Navy? I said, like I grew up right by the water in Alexandria, Egypt. I like the water. I think the Navy would be really cool. The guy was like, we have boats in the Army. And if you want to join the Air Force, we have airplanes in the Army. You should join the Army. And he talked to me. And by the time he was done, he was a Puerto Rican guy. By the time he was done, I was going to take my ASVAB to join the Army. And join the Army from there. Sold.
How long did it take you from the time you landed at JFK to like getting your green card and then like signing your papers for the military?
4 years.
4 years?
4 years. So I, three and a half, but between 3 and 4 years. Because initially when I signed for the Army, I signed on a delay entry program because I was in college. I was taking college classes. And they wouldn't take you out of college to join. So they put me in the delay entry program for I think about 4 or 5 months. Then summer of 1995 is when I was shipped to basic training.
And how old were you at that time?
25.
25.
Yep.
So you're an old man by military standards.
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I think it helps too, because all of these mind games they play with you in basic training, you've seen it because you joined in an older age. You didn't because you were a young guy. Still not very young, but young. So once you join in the age, your drill sergeant might be, I was 25, my drill sergeant most likely was like 24.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like odd.
Yeah.
But we had a guy who was 31. We had a female, she was 31. She grew up in between Nigeria and the UK. She was a lawyer. So we had all of this mix of people.
What MOS did you come in under and start training for?
So initially, when you're not a U.S. citizen, there are limited jobs you can have. So initially, I was what used to be 71 Lima, which is administrative clerk.
Okay.
And I told the recruiter, like, hey, I wanna have a really cool job. So if you read the job descriptions in the Army manual, every job is a cool job.
Right.
So
yeah.
the administrative specialist sounded like, as a matter of fact, like, the guy who puts gas in cars, it says petroleum specialist, and you read it, and you're like, wow, this is an awesome job. I'm gonna be like an oil engineer.
A specialist.
Exactly. So I was a 71 Lima, which is an administrative specialist.
Cool. So you get through basic training and start your Army career as a administrative specialist. What's it like for you? Are you enjoying the Army at this point?
So basic training is horrible for a lot of people. Basic training was not too much fun for me either. Like the first day in basic training, when they do this ice breaking things and they talk to people and, where are you from, why you joined the Army. So when you tell people I'm from Egypt, it's something not expected. You're the first guy most likely they've ever met
Right.
from Egypt. I used to have people in basic training just tell me talk because they've never heard anybody speak with an accent. And I was like, wow, this is really weird. So the drill sergeant didn't make it fun either. But then after that, my first assignment was, so I was holdover in basic, not in basic training, in AIT. So after basic training, I was holdover for security clearance holdover. although 71 Lima does not require security
Right.
clearance. So I was wrecking leaves like more than, like I became like an expert in how to wreck leaves. I was like, these guys, they can have me do a lot of other things, but I'm wrecking leaves every day. And it was like the fall. So you can wreck leaves and then tomorrow you have leaves everywhere. Then it was Thanksgiving of 95 is when I got shipped to Fort Hood, Texas. When there, obviously, I'm terrified. I still can't, well, let me take you back a bit. When I signed for the Army, there is something, I think it's called like 9 whiskey or something. There is something where they put on your contract to basically be evaluated for English.
Okay.
So I didn't know that. And so I went to basic training not knowing they're supposed to evaluate me if I can understand English enough to go to AIT after that, or they'll send me to San Antonio for English as a second language. Well, I memorized the smart book. So they thought I knew English. So people will ask me like, you know, what's this? I'll say a cup of coffee because the answer is a cup of coffee.
Right.
But not knowing really what's going on. So the drill sergeants, they said this guy can speak English good enough to be in the Army. So I'm like, great. So I didn't know that till they told me after. Then when I went to Fort Hood, Texas, I was assigned to a military police unit. The military police unit, I have a sergeant first class, took me under his wings, and the guy really, I tell everybody, like, when you join the Army, you want to go, so there is a strategic assignment and tactical assignments. I tell everybody, like, go to a tactical assignment in the beginning. Learn how to soldier. If you are lucky, you're going to have a good supervisor. He's going to teach you how to, what's important in the Army. So the guy was like, hey, man, make sure your boots are spit shined, your uniform is starched, and you have a high and tight haircut, and make sure you can run. If you do those 4 things, you're going to go places in the Army. I'm like, you know what? This is the easiest job ever. Because every Sunday, I would spend my time on spit shining my boots. I take my uniform to get it starched, go have a haircut, and just run. And I'm like, you know what? This is easy. So they start sending me like to take some computer classes, PowerPoint classes. The unit deployed to Bosnia 4 months after I was there, 5 months after I was there. So basically, I deployed for 9 months where this is immersion. This is language immersion, military immersion.
Right.
You are
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
with the military for 9 months. My first book that I really read that was not in school, I've read when I was there. My platoon sergeant was Sergeant First Class Green, gave me the book, and he's like, hey, read it, and I'll help you with it. University of Maryland went there. I took college classes. And then you soldier in 24/7.
Yeah.
You go to sleep, and you have your PT uniform and your fatigues. And you don't even have any other clothes. So you're doing that 24/7. So I came back. English is a lot better. I can read more. And when I came back, I felt like I can soldier a lot better. And then when you're there, you exercising, you're doing PT. I used to go out with the whenever they were short, like, you know, gunners. I'm a guy who's fit. Sergeant First Class Green trying to help me out. So he's like, hey man, just go out with whoever is going on patrol. So I would go out with units going on, squads going on patrol, come back, do my job. I did that for the entire 9 months. I was in Bosnia. When I came back, I was like, well, I've done something cool. Let me PCS. So I asked to PCS, so they sent me to Germany.
And was this it's still in the administrative field?
Yeah, so I was
Yeah.
I was an admin guy, and but I didn't really do a lot of. I mean, I did the admin work, but I did the other stuff. Like when I was in a military police unit, I did the military police stuff.
Yeah.
When I went to Germany, I was in an infantry unit, so they sent me to do infantry stuff. So I've learned a lot from that. And then when I was in Germany, I got my citizenship. They sent me back to Texas to get my citizenship. It was really cool. And the guy who did my citizenship test, he's like, what you gonna do next? You can do anything you wanted in the Army now. You are a US citizen. I'm like, awesome. I might be an officer, I might do something else, I might be an MI guy, but I wanted to be an interrogator. So I called the interrogator branch, and I said, hey guys, I'm a US citizen now. I want to be an interrogator. And the guy was like, what language? I said Arabic. This was 1999.
Okay.
98, 99. And the guy was like, what language? I said Arabic. He's like, I have no need for you. I'm like, so I wanted to explain to him more. I said, by the way, I'm 3-3 Arabic native. You don't have to send me to DLI. I'm going to save you a lot of money. You just send me to school. And it's going to save the army a year of training. He's like, what language again? I said, Arabic. He's like, I don't fucking need you. What part of that you don't understand?
What part of Serbo-Croat do you not
Yeah.
understand there, Adam?
Exactly.
Adam, just to back up, like when you were in basic or any of that other time, did they ever have you like take the D-Lab, take the DLPT, do anything? Did they ever recognize like your language skills and look to groom you because of that?
You're giving the military a lot of credit, man.
I know. Well,
Absolutely not.
I'm.
So I'll tell you, actually, the first guy he said something about language, the guy who drove me from MEPS, when he drove me from MEPS back to where I lived, and he's like, okay, I'm gonna ship like a few weeks or a few months after because I was in the delay entry program. The driver was like, he spoke to me in Spanish, and I said, well, I don't speak Spanish, and he's like, what language do you speak? I said Arabic. He's like, man, it would become very, very handy for you. Just the driver.
Mm-hmm.
But after that, nobody ever said anything to me other than making fun of my fucking accent. And then with my real last name, it sounds Spanish, so everybody spoke to me in Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
So I've learned some Spanish. Even when I was in Germany and I thought about ETSing, and so my supervisor, who was my supervisor for about 7-8 months, Major Russell, and he's like, what are you gonna do? I said, I'm gonna go to DLI to teach in DLI if I ETS. And he's like, who the fuck wanted to learn Spanish? Everybody speaks Spanish. I was like, I don't speak Spanish. And he's like, what do you speak? I said, Arabic. He's like, where did you learn Arabic? I'm like, I'm native. So nobody ever offered that.
This is my shocked face.
Yeah, I see.
This is my shocked face.
But what I did is I took the test on my own.
Okay.
I went and I said, you know what? There is like a language test. Let me take it.
Yeah.
So I took the test, get 3-3. I call and I'm like, guys, I wanna change my job. And then there was a Sergeant First Class Pringles. She was the Signal Intelligence Branch Manager. There was no email was not very common. Like not every soldier had an email back then. So I get a message, like one of these. I think it was like called Telegram message. So I get one of these messages. If you want to reclass to Signal Intelligence, call me. So I call her, and I'm like, I got this message from you. She's like, we'll give you $20,000 if you re-enlist, stay in the army, change to Signal Intelligence. I'm like, say again. So this interrogator guy doesn't want to even take me. You're gonna give me $20,000? Where do I sign? So and she's like, so I did that, and so I came from Germany to she's gonna send me to school, to Goodfellow, Air Force Base, and I get assignment to follow-up assignment to DLI, to teach Arabic. So I call her. I'm like, I'm just a brand new soldier in that field. I didn't want to go to DLI, and I was an E5 then. So she's like, where do you want to go? I said, Fort Bragg. She's like, you get to be the dumbest guy in the army. Send me a 4187. Fax it. So I faxed her a 4187. Next day, I had a follow-up assignment to Fort Bragg. And I was like, you know what, this is what I want to be. And everybody was like, so you got the opportunity to be assigned to DLI and you said no?
Yeah.
I said, yeah.
In Monterey, California.
Yeah,
Monterey, California.
I should mention.
with like 9 to 5 work hours.
Yeah.
No homework, weekends off.
Yeah, I have no regrets.
And you went
Yeah.
to Fayetteville,
Yeah.
North Carolina.
I went to
offers
Vietnam.
she offers you steak and lobster, and you're like, I think I'd like the beans.
Exactly, exactly. So I went to airborne school en route. So in airborne school, the black hat is like, what's your MOS? I'm like 98 Golf. So it used to be 98 Golf before it became 35 Papa. And he's like, what the fuck is that? Like they really didn't, like it was
Yeah.
so unique MOS, a lot of people didn't know anything about it. And he's like, I was like, MI. He's like, oh, you got to be one of those smart guys. So first jump in airborne school, I bounced off the fucking ground like a sack of shit. Like, blip, 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 blip. And then the black hat comes with a big fucking, one of those mega horns, and he's like, hey, November, did you break your fucking legs? And I was very light. When I went to airborne school, I was, when I went to the 82nd I remember the weigh-in I was 128 pounds. When I joined the Army, I was 112 pounds.
Wow.
So when I went to airborne school, I used to see everybody landing, and I'm like hanging there. And I'm like, when am I gonna come down? Of course, you come down and you bounce off a few times. And I was like, man, I think I broke my thigh. I had a picture like really, really bruised and blue. But I've learned really like how to, like again, English is improving as you move on. And then I go to the 82nd and I'm the first. It was an MI battalion within the 82nd. And I was the first. So they were changing that battalion from Spanish to Arabic. So again, I go there and nobody thinks I spoke Arabic. I'm like, this guy, Spanish unit, he looks Spanish. He must be a Spanish linguist. So everybody's speaking Spanish. I'm like, guys, I swear I don't speak Spanish. But the S3 Sergeant Major was a good guy I used to run with all the time. So there was a deal between DoD and the FBI that when the FBI needed linguists, they can borrow from DoD. So we had a guy in the unit, his name was Muhammad. So obviously, if the unit
Spanish speaker.
No, actually, he was a supply guy. So obviously, if the unit has one Arabic speaker, it must be Muhammad. So when the FBI asked for the Arabic speaker and the unit had one, so they went to Muhammad. They were like, hey, we need you to go TDY for the FBI because they need an Arabic speaker. And Muhammad's like, I don't fucking speak Arabic. So the S3 Sergeant Major goes to the S1, the admin section, and they're like, hey, who speaks Arabic? And she's like, your running buddy speaks Arabic. So he comes to me and he's like, hey, Sergeant G, what fucking language do you speak? I said, Arabic. And he's like, how the fuck did you learn Arabic? So everybody really, for the longest, thought I spoke Spanish. So I ended up going to the FBI for 3 months in 1999.
And what were you doing when you were TDY to the FBI?
So the FBI, they had one part I can't talk about, but it was like related to the Bin Laden personality himself. And then the other part is they had the Al-Qaeda manual. They had it for a few years. It had a lot of military terms in it, and the FBI linguists couldn't translate it. So they borrowed 3 of us from the military. We had another Army guy and a Navy female. The 3 of us went to do that translation. And honestly, it was one of the easiest jobs because the translation from Arabic to English was actually retranslating back what was translated from English to Arabic.
Oh, that's
Interesting.
It was an actual Army manual.
It was an actual Army manual. The security guard the private security guard of Bin Laden used to be a supply clerk in the Army. Was an Egyptian American.
Yes, he
Army
worked
guy.
at Special Forces.
Yes.
Yeah.
He worked in the Special Forces, and in order for him, he was building the manual for them. So he took a lot of U.S. Army manuals and translated into like how to do a Swiss seat, how to seize an airfield.
Yeah.
So a lot of these things that how to do land nav. So for me, it was like, this is gonna be the easiest job ever, and
Yeah.
they're gonna give me a certificate of appreciation from the director of the FBI. So I think it took me less than 3 months to translate it, but I sat there for 3 months.
Were the other 2 people that were working with you, were they both native speakers or were they DLI trained?
No, they were DLI trained. I was the only native speaker. I was like, and I'm sure you guys know this. So in the SIGINT branch, the Army manual said, in order for you to have a TSSCI, you have to be a U.S. born, believe it or not.
You have to be U.S. born or U.S.
Yeah,
Oh, I
US
didn't know
born.
that.
Yeah. You cannot have foreign relatives.
Oh, interesting.
So a native has to have foreign relatives because we don't grow on trees.
Sure.
But there is a caveat there where they can do compelling needs. Like somebody has a military unit or an intel organization can sponsor you to do a compelling needs to say, okay, we're willing to give that guy a clearance because the risk.
Yeah, operational requirements.
Operational requirements.
Yeah.
So that's how I got my clearance. It took me 4 years to get my clearance. So I was one of very, very, very few, at that time, I was one of extremely few natives in the SIGINT branch.
And since you were in signals intelligence, I mean, were you learning the signals field as well? I mean, like when I think of someone like yourself, I think like, oh, cryptolinguist. Like that would be kind of the position for someone like you.
So yes, I was learning the signal stuff, and honestly, knowing the language gave me an advantage. because you would spend time on sergeant's time on Thursday to practice your language. For me, I didn't need to do that. I would just I would get equipment and just play with the equipment. And then when I was in the unit that I wrote the book about, they had the equipment, and if you break it, it's okay. So I'm like, okay, let me play with this equipment to figure it out. So I had more time to spend on the equipment, where other guys were spending time on learning the language. So I see it like the guys who were DLI trained and knowing the equipment, they worked twice as hard as I did.
Yeah.
When it comes to language.
Yeah.
And we had guys who were phenomenal linguists who were DLI trained.
But a lot of that was their own personal effort that went into it. Like if somebody came out of DLI and then didn't like pursue it on their own and didn't really kind of try, like DLI leaves you with sort of a good working knowledge, but a flat level also.
Correct. DLI gives you a foundation.
Yeah.
But the guys who I've seen, they were like phenomenal linguists. They after DLI, they did immersion training. They went Middlebury for training.
Yeah.
They went
Yeah.
DLI East for training. They went overseas. But we had guys who were extremely smart, like in the unit, where like there is a guy, and I talked about him in the book. In the beginning, I was like, there is no way he learned Arabic in 4 months. I mean, no fucking way. So I sat with him and we watched like soap opera, and I'm like, what did they just say? And then he would tell me exactly what they said. And that was like Egyptian Arabic. I was like, let me change it to Lebanese Arabic.
Yeah.
So I would change it to Lebanese Arabic. I was like, hey, just tell me what just happened. And he would say it, and I was like, that guy learned Arabic in 4 months.
Yeah.
So we had guys who were like gifted.
Yeah.
We had a guy learn Somali in about 3-4 months. And those guys used to humble the heck out of me, and I'm like, man, I'm the dumbest guy in the room. So I gotta work harder. So they really encouraged me to work even harder in knowing the equipment. Or then I went and I learned I took some Farsi classes, I took some Swahili classes. I was like, in order for me to keep up with these guys, I have to do something, to learn something. You cannot just be the, hey man, I grew up speaking Arabic and I've learned English in the streets of New York, and look at me, I'm smart. And
Yeah.
no, so you really have to work twice as hard as well.
This is a really sort of nerdy question about this, but for people who are listening and don't understand when we say a TSSCI, we're talking about a top secret clearance with sensitive compartmentalized information, which is, it's a very high level of clearance. I thought you had to have a TSSCI to go to Goodfellow. I thought doesn't the whole SIGINT like sort of umbrella require a TSSCI?
Yeah, they give you an interim. So they give you an
okay.
interim TSSCI,
Okay.
and I had this interim for a good 3-4 years, and then I was in the 82nd. I was in Fort Bragg when 9/11 happened. But I was supposed to go to ANOC, so Advanced Non-Commissioned Officer School, to be an E7 after that. ANOC or BNOC. So I was going to Huachuca for training, and that was like a few months, I would say maybe 2 or 3 months after 9/11. When I'm there, so phase 1 is Common Core. There is no required clearance there. Then phase 2, and I excelled in phase 1, and I was like, I got like, all of this, exceed the course standard, and I'm super happy. I'm like, I'm a guy wearing my maroon beret. I'm from the 82nd.
That's right.
And then first day in phase 2, I get pulled aside, and our FAC advisor, he pulls me, like the NCO guy teaching us, he pulled me aside. He's like, I'm sure you heard what's going on, so you need to go talk to the security. I was like, honestly, I didn't hear anything, but what's going on? So they pulled me aside because they suspended my interim clearance.
Wow.
Randomly after 9/11.
Wow.
And the reason is you fill out your SF-86. That's your when you apply for your clearance.
Yeah.
So my SF-86, there was a question. It's one of those. It was like an application, like a paper, nothing online. And it says, one of the questions, it says, do you hold, like something like, do you hold or have you ever held another passport? So it's 2 questions in one. And the answer can be yes to either. So I answered yes, because I did hold another passport in the past. Then the question right after that, what's your passport number? And that's your US passport number. So I put my US passport number. And the security lady in Fort Huachuca, pulls me aside and she's like, hey, you have an Egyptian passport you didn't tell us about. So me being an 82nd guy, smart ass, I was like, well, you know something I don't know. I'm glad you know that I have an Egyptian passport because I don't have an Egyptian passport. She's like, well, here, and she showed me, and I was like, well, if you read the question, yeah, English is my fucking second language, but I can read. If you read the question, it's double, it can be either.
Right.
It's two questions in one. And she's like, well, you have to show me that US passport that you're talking about with this number. So I was like, well, I didn't know Arizona's outside of the US. I needed to bring my passport to come into Arizona. So obviously she's like, okay, you smart ass. You have 24 hours to show us your passport or you're going to be kicked out of the course. So I was kicked out of the course.
Oh my God.
So I went back to Bragg. The battalion sergeant major had a fit because he's like, he had an NCO, got kicked out of school for nothing wrong I've done.
Yeah.
I exceeded course standard.
Yeah.
I was doing very well. So he's like, fuck this compelling need thing. The clearance thing is taking forever. So they got some CI warrant officer from installation. So they did some extra interviews. The warrant officer who did the interview asked me all of these different questions. He had like a 3-hour interview with me. And he's like, I'm not supposed to tell you this, but I'm going to write the strongest recommendation for your clearance to be finalized. During that time, I had been interviewed, initial interview to go to the unit.
Yeah.
I had an application, and I sent the application right after 9/11. I was going to leave the Army, honestly, before 9/11. 9/11 made me stay. So I ended up getting my clearance because I got kicked out of school. So they expedited my clearance. Then I went back to phase 2, and I passed.
Did you visit her office?
I didn't. I
yeah.
was like, that lady, most likely if she sees me, she's going to
So
choke me.
you made it E7, you went through ANOC. You already have in your mind now after 9/11 that you've heard of this other unit out there that you'd like to go and try out for. What was that process like of applying for it and then going to selection?
So honestly, I've never heard of the unit. They were recruiting in Fort Bragg, and my first sergeant was like, hey, there is a good recruiting. There is a unit recruiting. I think I was an E6 at that time. There is a unit recruiting. You should go. I had no idea there is a unit exist. I was like, I like to tell people, like, I was really one of the dumbest guys in the Army. I'm like, I have no idea what's going on in the Army. I've heard of Delta. I've heard of, like, the Green Beret, the Rangers, obviously, everybody knows. But I'm like, what's this? So when they were recruiting, I had gotten married. My wife getting her master's from Fayetteville State University in Fort Bragg. We just bought a condo. I'm like, that's it. I made it.
Right.
I
It's
arrived.
The life. It's the life. Yeah.
It's the life. So when they came and they gave me a packet, I took the packet and I ignored it. 9/11 happened, and I got another call from the recruiter, who I spoke about in the book. One of the smartest guys I've ever met in my life. And he's like, hey, with everything happening, we're just checking what is your packet. I said, you know what? You'll have it, like, within days. I went home that day, filled out the entire application, which is a thick application. You write stuff, and you do hand writing and stuff, and obviously if English is your second language, you're like, how the fuck? So I'm like, I'm writing, and I'm taking my time, and my hands hurt. And then I FedExed the packet to him like a few days after. Then I get invited to go to selection. I had no idea, like, what's this about? And I think it's part of the selection process is, are you willing to take a leap of faith? Mm-hmm. Are you a guy who willing to do something without knowing what's in the end? What's in the end? And I think it's designed that way. It's like, are you willing to, if I tell you go out through that door, not knowing what's on the other side, are you willing to do it? And I think that's what they were looking for, somebody who's just willing to take the risk. So I get invited to selection. I go to selection, and my wife was pregnant at that time. Selection was brutal for me. There are some guys in selection, they were with me. You can tell these guys, like, they got some intel. Like, they know what's happening. They know what's next.
The course.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they know what's happening next. And my advice to anybody, don't. Just go
with it.
Yeah.
Just go with it.
Yeah.
Because when you go with it, you really don't know what to expect. When they tell you run, run. They tell you walk, walk. And they're not going to tell you how much or how long or how far. You just do it. And don't quit. Then you'll make it. So the first few days in selection, again, I came from a tactical unit. I came from the 82nd. So in the 82nd, you do a lot of land nav. So I'm good with land navs, land navigation. And the first few days in selection, I think the first 2-3 days, I think I did everything wrong. Like everything they gave me to do, which was a lot of land navigation, and I'm like, and they talk really fast, and I don't understand what they're saying. And I was like, after 2-3 days, I go and lay down on my bunk bed, and I raise my legs in the air because they are sore. I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with me? Like, I'm just doing everything wrong. And then I thought, I was like, every problem has a solution. I just need to calm down. I need to get my shit together. And I put it in my mind, like, these guys, they asked me to come to selection for a reason. I must have something that they are looking for. Mm-hmm. So I just need to calm the fuck down and just do what I need to do without expecting any, there is no feedback. Without expecting any feedback, just do your best. And then from day 3, I think, things turned around for me. I'm like, okay, you know what? If they ask me to run, I'm gonna fucking run. I'm gonna give it all I have. And if I'm not the first guy, because I was like, when I was in Germany, I was like soldier of the year. I was like in the 82nd, I was a guy who runs around the formation and annoy the fuck out of everybody because you're the guy who can run. So I'm thinking I'm special. I mean, you go there and everybody there is special.
Right.
And I'm not special.
But you said at the same time, if I recall right from reading your book, that there were like special forces guys that didn't make it through this selection course.
We had guys, again, because I think when you go to selection thinking you're special,
yeah,
it hits you hard when you realize you're not special.
Yeah.
You're not.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, I'm having this hard time, so let me do my best. So if there is an obstacle course, I'm gonna do my best. Obstacle course in the military in general, in air assault school, honestly, any obstacle course is not designed for short people.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what the fuck? So part of this obstacle course, I'm like, I'm coming down like an obstacle, and I'm like, I'm holding with one arm. I'm like, am I gonna reach like what's there, or I'm gonna fall on my ass? And it's high, and you're like, man, this is gonna fucking hurt. But again, that's that leap of faith. And then there was like one of the cadres down there. I think, I don't know, like they felt bad for me, or they're like, whenever I had a guy that fucking short going through, let's help him out. So some guy goes and he's like, hey, and they have like different names for you. So he calls me that name. Just move your fucking leg to the right a bit. Just reach out to the left a bit. And then just let go, man, let go. And I'm like, man, if I let go and I fall, it's gonna hurt. Then finally, again, I froze honestly for a bit. And then finally I let go. And I landed in another like pipe. But none of the obstacle course in the Army designed for short people. I think they need to revisit that shit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Hey, Adam, before we kind of move into the unit, I would love to ask you about the 98 golf field in general, because and it's 35 now.
35 papa.
35 papa. Just for like any viewers who might be thinking about it, because it's rare to go to a tactical position in that job. Like a lot of people go to listening posts and sit in a nice area and whatnot. What was it like for you? Was the 82nd using SIGINTers the way like a SOT A might be used? Were they used? Did you have vehicles? Was it like land based? What was that kind of? What was it like to be?
So we had the 82nd at that time we had jamming guys. We have LLVI, which is like the low level voice intercept guys, and we have the collector guys in a system called the Turkey, which is a truck. The jamming guys, it was a telki, whatever that stands for. But when you turn the jammer on, it fucking fries your goddamn brain. I think that's why a lot of SIGINT guys have daughters, no sons.
Yeah.
I was in an LLVI team, which is basically you jump with the scouts, and you carry your stuff, and you go set up a high site, and you do collection. That's in theory. Was the 82nd, or I met 4th ID guys in Iraq. I met a lot of the tactical units in Iraq. Honestly, none of them was doing that. So after that, when 9/11 happened, if you ask me what the 82nd SIGINT guys were doing, we were PMCSing vehicles in the motor pool. We just spend a lot of time in the motor pool to make sure all our Humvees are lined up. They have there is no oil drips. It's not dripping oil, and you fucking inspect the vehicle every week, just without you driving the vehicle at all. You just inspect it every week, because that's how you keep soldiers busy. So tactical units are good to learn soldier in, but they were not. As a matter of fact, if you didn't have a final clearance, it was okay because you don't have access to anything.
Access to the gear.
Yeah. So and even the gear you had were tactical gears. So you were not really doing a lot of things. My recommendation to anybody who wanted to join that field, still go to a tactical unit first, because
Yeah.
you're gonna learn how to soldier. You're gonna learn how to wear your uniform. You're gonna learn discipline.
Yeah.
Then go after that. If you go to a strategic assignment, like if you go to the NSA, I mean, you go to the NSA and you see like SIGINT guys who never been in a regular army unit, and you look at them and you're like, dude, do you know how to put your uniform on?
Yeah.
But you still need to that discipline of soldiering.
I feel like the Saudis really proved their worth, like
Correct.
during the GWAT. Do you feel that the big army just doesn't understand how to employ their SIGINTers?
Yeah, to a certain extent, because again, you fall under, and I think they changed a lot now, but I'm talking about like things like
Sure.
20 years ago. You are under a combat brigade team. The brigade commander is like, when you go tell him SIGINT team, and they gotta jump with your scouts, and he's like, no, my scouts gotta do all of these things. Why do I need these SIGINT guys? Because he doesn't know.
Yeah.
They are not. Again, it's a very, very small field in the army. Not a lot of people know things about it. They know you're gonna put your headset on, you're gonna listen to what we don't know. But obviously, SIGINT is. I mean, there is huge arguments between SIGINT guys and human guys. Which one is more important? I think both of them are important. Obviously, after 9/11, the whole thing changed.
Right.
SIGINT became, to a lot of people, became a lot more crucial than human. Again, I don't agree or disagree. I think you can use both, but tracking bad guys through SIGINT became very efficient during the GWAT, and that it became like the game. And I've seen human guys using SIGINT equipment to track guys. It just became it was a trend, I guess.
Yeah.
And when you went to selection, did you have any? Did they tell you, or were you able to request, or did you know? Were you going to continue to be a signals intelligence guy, or were they going to try to bring you into the human intelligence side?
They don't tell you. And my first week, so past selection, I think we lost about 65 to 70%. So I'm not going to get in exact numbers. Past selection, they said, hey, your wife is pregnant. You can postpone your PCS. I said no. I don't know if the GWAT gonna wait for me. I gotta go. My first week in the course, it was me, another 2 or 3 guys. They pulled us aside and they talked about possibility of moving us. And for me, it was a no-starter, because I'm like, I just PCS from Fort Bragg to where I'm supposed to be, and you guys gonna move me again? And my wife is giving birth like in a week or 2. I'm not playing that. But they ended up, the SIGINT side trumped, because we were SIGINT guys. I think if we came from a different MOS, it would have been more negotiable. But they don't tell you. And honestly, you don't know the structure of the organization till after you graduate the course.
Right.
So during the course, you're like, what am I doing? Like, why am I here?
Right.
They break the course into phases, and every phase is different. It's something different. And they're like, hey, next week you're gonna just make sure you pack your bags for being in the jungle. And then you pack, and you don't know where you go, and you don't know what's going on. And it's designed that for you not knowing what will be there, and I think it plays with your psychology. A lot of us in the military, when you take a PT test, they count. I mean, you're doing your PT test and they count 1, 2, 3. Where in that community they don't. So you do push-ups, and they don't tell you. They say start, and you keep doing it, and they stop. And you're like, okay, how many did I do? Did I pass? So they trying to select people are not looking for feedback. They're not looking for validation. It's psychological.
Yeah.
If you have the people always looking for validation, I think that could become like risky with the business.
Of the training pipeline that you went through after selection, what were your favorite and least favorite aspects of it?
It's a good question. So I'll talk about that not classified stuff. I loved fucking crashing cars. So you go and you drive, you take this defensive driving course, and you crash cars and you drive like a maniac, and I'm like, man, this is just like Egypt. Awesome. I'm back home.
It's like a traffic circle, right?
It's like a traffic circle.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm back home. So those some of those like defensive driving courses were really cool. My least favorite was like the lack of fucking sleep, because you are given there are some tasks you do as a team, but there are a lot of tasks you do as a singleton. And as a singleton, you're like, am I doing the right thing? Am I not doing the right thing? What time do I need to wake up? What time do I need to sleep? And then there are things that you're doing, and in order for you to do it right, I mean, some guys would just finish it quickly, go to sleep by 10, wake up at 6 next day, they got their 8 hours of sleep. But we had guys who were like, no, I'm gonna stay on it. And did I do it right? Can I do it better? And you keep doing it better and better and better and better. And then you realize, well, you have only 3 hours to sleep. Mm-hmm. Then you sleep those 3 hours, and then you wake up so the lack sleep. And then my wife we just had our firstborn baby, and I'm like, I'm not going home, or I'm going home just to sleep for a couple of hours. So my wife needed that family support, and we didn't have anybody.
Right.
We didn't have family in the U.S. So I think after like 3 months after my first daughter was born, my wife took her and went to Egypt till I finished the course.
Yeah.
And then she came right before graduation. 2 months after I graduated, again, this was during 9/11. 2 months after graduation, I went to my first deployment. So my wife ended up traveling again, not because we didn't have that family support structure.
Yeah.
And if it's snowing, and she had a baby, and like literally she would call, like other unit guys' wives, and she's like, I'm really, really sorry, but it's snowing, I cannot take my daughter out, my car is stuck, can you get me diapers? And we did have other family members who were go and buy diapers and bring it to the house. So the unit, I'm not gonna say the unit as a structure did that, because we didn't have that family support group like regular Army units do, but we had the guys went through the course with me, and we became like a family. Mm-hmm. So she would call one of the wives to do that. But yeah, least favorite thing is lack of sleep. And again, driving like crazy. I think I love that shit.
Yeah.
And so you get qualified, you get your certificate and all that good stuff, and you said you're out the door in 2 months?
Yep.
Whereabouts are they sending you?
So I went to the Middle East. I went to a Gulf country. We talked about it in the book briefly, but it's like you go to college, and when you graduate college, you realize that you don't know shit. I'm like, man, I just went training for a year. And I was like, I thought I was on top of my game. And I deploy, and my first deployment, one of the guys, he was the class before me. I'll call him Mike for this. But he used to be driving. I'm sitting next to him with the equipment. And he's telling me, so click on this icon, open this drop-down menu. And I'm like, is he fucking real? Like, is he seeing what I'm seeing, or he had it in his memory? Like, he knew the equipment inside out. He spoke Arabic. He looked like an Arab guy. He was Mexican American. And he went through like step by step. And then I realized, man, all of the stuff I've learned is nothing. I'm now learning.
Yeah.
Then the guys you deploy with first, they teach you. And they are patient enough to like, okay, this English as a second language guy, we're taking him step by step to teach him. But then I was helping them by like walking with them in the streets and speaking Arabic to everybody.
Right.
And then I was like, hey man, you don't have to talk. They're gonna think we're both like just Arab guys. Let's go smoke some shisha together.
Did you, obviously Egyptian, Leisha is very distinct. Did you practice at all, or did you work on, like different dialects in order to sort of try to fit in more in different places?
Yeah, so in some of the deployments, so this first deployment was extremely funny. We had a gate guard in our house. And the guy was like, if you didn't speak Arabic, I would have thought you're an Arab. But once you speak Arabic, I don't think you're an Arab because your Arabic is broken. And I was like, that's the funniest thing I've ever heard in my life. But then you pick. You talk to the guards. You talk to people in the streets. And then you start picking. There are very distinct words from one dialect to another. So in deployments, I did that. To the point, if I was there for like 2-3 months, after 2-3 months, I could carry a conversation with somebody. They would think I'm local.
Okay, so you're not, because you're not just talking about like the colloquialisms like shlonik, but also like the Egyptian g, right? Which
Egyptians, they say ga. Others, they say ja. So you pick those things, and then the different words, and then, for example, the country, like for some reason the word money, it has different. There is a different word for it in every. So in falus in a lot of the Arab countries, and then the country we were in, there was another country. They said zalat, and zalat means rocks.
Zalat, yeah.
And you hear it, and I'm like, why are these people talking about rocks? And then you realize actually they use it for money.
Yeah.
And then Masari in the Levantine dialect, it's for flus, for money.
Yeah.
So you start picking those things in different countries, and then when you listen to them, you'll be like, huh, that guy is from Lebanon, or that guy is from Syria, or that guy is from Yemen. You picking those things.
Yeah.
And what can you say about that first deployment that you went on, as far as like now you're an army spy and you're working a counterterrorism mission? I mean, what did you think and feel about all that?
So when like after 9/11, I think anybody in the military deployed, they felt they are in the top of the world. They're like,
Sure.
what, I'm fighting this war. I'm catching bad guys. I'm gonna go catch all of these bad guys and make sure this doesn't happen again. And then you deploying with one of the most unique units in the military that a lot of people don't know. And then the status I was deploying in that deployment, I was flying, and there is an older American lady sat next to me. And you gotta love older American ladies because they love to talk. So that lady is asking me all of these questions, and I'm like, is she testing me? Is she trying to figure out my cover? Is she? Then you're like, okay, nice lady, let's just move on. But then you go, and as you're learning from other guys what to do, and then I broke equipment. I was like infamous for breaking equipment. So I'm running the equipment more than a lot of, like, we had guys, obviously, they're like, I'm going to just run the equipment from the house. I would take equipment out and run equipment, and take it to the dust, take it to the heat.
Stress test it.
And honestly, it wasn't even intentionally testing it. I was like using it. So it would break. And I would call somebody back home in the States and say, hey, the equipment broke. What? And he's like, again, we had guys, I used to think really they looking at the manual, but it was in their head.
Yeah.
So I was like, again, I got to up my game. These guys know the equipment inside out. And then you go and you're like, okay, now we're going after bad guys who did this. So you really, really feel like proud and happy, and you're like, okay, I just finished this selection and course. We started too many people and we ended up very few. So you are on top of the world now.
Yeah.
And you're like, then 2-3 deployments after, they get hit upside your head to realize I'm not invisible. I need to come back to the ground. You cannot be in the sky.
And then in 2003, of course, Iraq happens. Were you over in the country, looking for Saddam and his boys?
So after that deployment, the first deployment, I came back. I wanted to say a month after I came back, they were like, hey, we need guys to go to Iraq. And I was like, yeah, send me. I'm going. So I was in one of so we had some guys in the invasion from the unit. And then after that, I was the first deployment after that. It was me and 4 other people. And we were in the group looking for Saddam. We were attached to Delta. We stayed in Baghdad for a bit. I get to see the lions that Saddam's kids had in their house. I'm like, why do you fucking have lions in the house? And then obviously when Saddam's sons ran away, they left the lions with no food. I'm like, now lions are hungry in the cage. So we stayed in one of those houses. And then my first day in country, in Iraq, I ended up, me and another guy, you know him, Robbie. He and I went out in a mission, and I think in that mission we hit maybe 10 to 15 houses, and obviously they were like night missions. You go out in the evening, and there was this older guy with us in the vehicle in the Panther, and I'm like, man, this old Sergeant Major, why is he fucking out with us? And I was like, again, I was like, I think 30 years old, and I'm like, I'm in shape. So we go out, and then Robbie comes to me, and he's like, hey, man, you might want to be careful when you talk to this old guy. He's a general. I'm like, why the fuck the general going out with us in a mission? I'm like, oh, whatever, man. Then we go back. I think we hit like maybe 10 houses at that time. And then when we go back, General Stan McChrystal stands in front of everybody, takes his flag vest off. He was a one-star at that time. He was about to be the JSOC commander, and he talks to everybody. I'm like, Robbie, you're right. The guy's a general. And I was talking to him like he's my buddy. But then then the Delta guys honestly were awesome. After 4 or 5 missions with them, they built that trust and be like, hey man, we're firing out in the back. Do you want to come with us and fire some rounds downrange? So I was there for about 3 months. Was in Baghdad for a bit. Then we went to Tikrit. From listening to a lot of the chatters and from being involved in interrogations, I was like, Saddam gotta be in Tikrit. He can't be anywhere else.
Right.
Then me and another guy went to Tikrit. Then Robbie and another person went to Mosul. And we had an analyst. I think he went to Mosul with the other 2 guys because he didn't come with us. And then we ended up in Tikrit. I think I came back a week or 2 weeks before they called Saddam Hussein. I was like, what the fuck? I shouldn't say it.
So you were operating some of the technology to
Correct.
try to find him, and the Delta guys were actioning the targets that you were able to find.
We were doing a lot of different things, honestly. So we were doing technology. We were doing some interrogations. We had, in the task force, we had other human intelligence attached to us, whether OGA or DIA. I mean, we had, and everybody was coming with, hey, there is a source said Saddam goes to this house every Friday morning to sit with his family, and we would go hit the house. We would go stage overnight somewhere to hit the house at 3 o'clock in the morning, and then Saddam was not there. But it was SIGINT intelligence, human intelligence. It was all kind of, it was interrogations, everything you can think of. All the resources were going against that, trying to find the guy. And then me and another guy were going out. So it was 4 of us, four operators and 1 analyst. The 4 operators, me and another guy who was half Lebanese, half Irish American. He and I used to go out a lot with the Delta guys. So we were, during the day, we would do run our equipment, do everything. Then in the evening, we would go out with them, with the Delta guys and hits. The other guy was like fast roping on top of some houses with them. I was going out with them in different locations, but we were doing both. The technical stuff and just going out and hits as well.
I know this is, so we've been in these wars for about 2 years, 2.5 years now. For you guys, is the technology changing quite a bit? Is it like, because I know there were significant changes over time, but are you guys already starting to see that where these contractors, people like, where they're like, oh, like, are you sending requirements back? Like, we need something that does this or whatever.
Absolutely. We were actually tracking, and it was really interesting because we were seeing as technology changes, we had guys who were sitting back home as like, hey man, now these guys were using push to talk. I think they're gonna use cell phones. Well, Iraq didn't have cell phones at that time, so they had high power cordless phones. But these cordless phones with like a big antenna can go like 100K, 100 kilometer. Then they were like, okay, they're building the GSM network in Iraq, so eventually these guys will use that. So there were like engineers, there were guys in the government, whether military or non-military, they were thinking ahead.
Yeah.
Which I think one of the best things that 9/11 was a horrible thing, but it brought some good things too, because it made us get advanced with technology.
Yeah.
It made us think ahead. It made us predict. Where we talked about earlier, hey, do you guys need Arabic? No, we don't need Arabic.
Yeah,
we need
right.
Croatian. Nobody was predicting ahead.
Right.
9/11 made people like think, okay, the bad guys, what they're gonna use next? Let's be ahead of them, and I think we were ahead of them for a bit.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I think these guys start catching on,
Yeah.
and then they were like, okay, well, we get caught through this technology. Let's go back to the old technology.
Yeah.
People can find us through smartphones, because smartphones, back then there was no smartphones, but now I'm assuming there are guys who are like, I'm gonna use this old Nokia
Right.
111 or 1011 phone that I bought for $10 that doesn't have emails, doesn't have GPS, doesn't have this, doesn't have. So it goes back and forth.
Yeah.
But yeah, we were trying to learn.
It was really interesting, like watching both Iraq and Afghanistan, the enemy adapt to American techniques, and sometimes they'd get it right. They'd be like, because if they didn't understand like ISR platforms, they might say, "Oh well, we're getting bombed because we're wearing metal. They can sense the metal." But then with phones, when they start plugging charms in, and things like that, it's really fascinating how quickly some of the things they picked up on.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing too, it's for some reason during at that time, and people might go and say, "Well, you're talking about these things now." Well, back then, nobody knew like exactly how we were doing it. But you
Right.
had the TTPs, but you had like congressmen or people like in TV or whatever going and saying, "Well, this is how we found that guy.
Right,
Let me
yeah.
tell you exactly,
Yeah.
step by step,
Yeah.
how we found the guy."
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, these comms will drop.
Yeah.
And then you'll be like, "Who the fuck just talked?" Then we start seeing guys mixing their phones.
Yeah.
Like bad guys just mixing phones.
Yeah.
In terrorist training camps, I think we didn't have any. I think they used to have like this box. Everybody drops his phone going
Yeah.
in. They go do the training. They come out. Everybody grabs the phone and just move on. So you could not find, okay, you know what, like now, I used to listen to Jack on this number, but that doesn't sound like Jack.
Yeah. Who's this
Yeah.
guy?
Who's this guy? And then that just keeps you going confused. And then you realize after 2-3 weeks, oh, it's Dave. And then 2 days after, oh, it's not Dave anymore.
Yeah.
Oh, it's Adam. So it was like, who's gonna be smarter than who?
Yeah.
So the combination between human, that's why I believe like we need all the ends.
Yeah.
Having human guys, having SIGINT guys. So you had human guys on the ground, they say, you know what, these guys swap phones. And this is how they do it.
Yeah.
And then you start realizing, okay, well, if I have the 10 phones, then I can do this and I can sift through it and I can do process of elimination. And then, without giving away any TTPs, but you might change your phone, but your entire family is not going to change their phones.
Right.
Right. Right.
And I'll find you somewhere else. I'll find you through your girlfriend.
Yeah. Yeah, they got savvy though. It was interesting. I remember one guy would, a high value target would like, anytime he wanted to make a call, he'd get on his motorcycle, drive, ride someplace, stand in front of the same compound or around the same compound, make his calls. So from a SIGINT perspective, that guy lives in that compound.
You know what's really dangerous is when we, and I used to see this a lot, when we think we're smarter than everybody else.
Yeah.
When you think you are the smartest guy in the room, you are the dumbest guy in the room.
Yeah.
So we used to think these guys are not sophisticated, they're
Right.
not smart. Then, I mean, we have, these guys were like in their emails, they used to not send emails. They just put the email in the draft box. And guess what? We have general officers after that when they have mistress. They doing that. So they learned, actually, our own guys learned from the bad guys how to, and this is public record. But they were always looking at, because these guys are not dumb.
Yeah.
They are like, okay, so-and-so just got killed. Let's do an AAR. And maybe they don't call it AAR, they call it something else. But they go through the same thinking
Right.
process, and they're like, you know what? They found Jack because Jack knows Dave, and Dave lives in this area, and let's change. And they'll change. And so we have to be step ahead. And the only way we can be step ahead if we have the cooperation and the collaboration of the different ends.
Yeah.
Like, unfortunately, I feel we were on a honeymoon after 9/11, where the military and the CIA and the FBI and the Treasury, everybody worked well together. And we were all like looking out for each other. And if I saw you downrange, I didn't care what patch you have in your shoulder. I didn't care if you are green, black, or white. I didn't care about anything. I think towards the end of my career, I started seeing back of, man, I'm CIA and you're not, so fuck you.
The fiefdoms building back
Exactly.
up. Yeah.
So everybody went back to, hey, I'm better than you. No, I'm better than you. No, I'm gonna keep this.
My ops are more secret than your
Yeah.
ops.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're not gonna share information. You talked about this in your book, where people not communicating well enough.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, I do commend you for your book and how you're trying to show people how to learn from, again, we did it this way, we can learn that, how to do it differently. So all of these things is like, I think, hopefully, we don't go through another big event to bring us back together. I think we should reconsider how we're doing business and just start sharing more information.
You know, on that note, you know, in addition to the technological piece, I'd really like to hear you talk a little bit about the people, because you write about that in your book, a bit about the people in this unit, the type of people who end up there, what it's like working with some of these guys where, I mean, they sound like very colorful characters, actually.
So yes, honestly, in as you guys know this, in the Special Operation Command or in the military in general, your most important asset, and I mean it, are the people. You could have the best equipment on the planet. You can have the best weapons on the planet. If you don't have the right people, and sadly, I feel there are some like higher commander. They say this, but they don't really believe it. But they say they keep saying it.
It briefs well.
It briefs extremely well, and I'm like, well, if he's saying it, maybe you should behave differently. Maybe you should give more. Having lower enlisted guys, a percentage of lower enlisted guys on food stamps is extremely unacceptable. You shouldn't have guys fighting for you, worrying about how they're going to feed their families. But to go to the unit, so for some reason, I think the way how they do the selection process, and I give the psychologist a lot of credit, because I think the psychological profiling they do to bring guys in, somehow it brings just the right guys to that environment. And I'm not sure what psychological profile they do that, but we had guys that, like I said, when I went through the course, so in the beginning of the course, they have guys go and they, I think at the end of the first week, so they give you a week to do a PowerPoint presentation as an intro about yourself. And again, I'm like, you know, I'm a guy who was born in Egypt, came to the US, not speaking English, $500 borrowed. I got to be a fucking rock star. Then you go and you sit and you go through, and I think I was like towards the end of the briefings. And the first guy goes there and he's like, I was the first guy that got his picture on a milk carton because he was kidnapped.
Holy
because
shit.
his father kidnapped him and took him out of country, took him to the Middle East.
Wow.
And his mom was looking for him. So his mom thought, how do I find him? And she got this idea, and she's like, I'm gonna put his name and picture on a milk carton. So he goes there and he say this, and he grew up in the Middle East, and his grandmother raised him, and then he went to live in Libya for a bit, and you sit there and I was like, I'm nobody. And then second guy goes, and he's like, I was the mayor of my town for one day during a revolution. He came from the Eastern Bloc. And I'm like, okay. Then another guy goes, and he's like, oh, I grew up in South America. This is a white guy. He's like, I grew up in South America. I speak Portuguese, Spanish, French, and I'm from Alaska, and I'm gonna do like, you know, I go like, he does this snow fishing, and I'm like, dude, I'm gonna go speak after all of these guys. Then a girl goes, and she's like, I went to West Point, and I'm a world-class swimmer, and I can swim and run better than all of you guys. I'm smarter than all of you. And I'm like, so you see those things, and then we have a guy, he goes and he's like, I lost my eye in training. I have one eye, and they didn't kick me out of the army because I fought the army. The army wanted to kick him out to medically board him, and he fights.
Yeah.
Ranger qualified, going through the course, did very well in selection with one eye. And he like, oh, Adam, and you complaining about you being fucking short. So you have nothing on those guys. So, and then these guys, like I said, they humble the fuck out of you, males and females. We have one, she went like cross-country skiing in Europe, and she rode her bike all over Europe, and she's a warrant officer. So you look at the group of people you are with, and you're like, okay, I really need to work harder. So it encourages you to work harder. And then when you deploy with these guys, you realize, okay, this guy speaks 5 languages. Adam, you're a native Arabic speaker, good for you. And you can barely speak English. Great. So really working with them and deploying with them. And then you have the guys who can build computers in their own. They sit in their basement. And then a lot of people think, well, he's just a nerd. I'm like, yeah, that nerd runs his 2 miles in 11 plus minutes.
Right.
That nerd can weight lift more than you. And that nerd looks like a really, really nice, cool guy, but he can punch the fuck out of you and kill you. Or the guy, I said in the book, he looked like Elton John. He went to Ranger School when he was 40. And he passed Ranger School. And I'm like, ah. So you see all of these things and you're like, okay, well, this unit is made out of very unique characters, and I was lucky and fortunate to be one of those hopefully unique characters.
Do you find, because it's like, these sound like very like intelligent and driven, motivated people, like do you find that they have these sort of like eccentric hobbies and things like this that they...
Yes. Yeah, like the guy with the one eye, for example. He, when we during the course, they'll tell you like, you know, I don't want to get into any like sources and methods, but let's say they tell you like do a concealment device, something to conceal something in.
Sure.
So I'll go buy a box of chocolate and I'll unseal it and put things in. He will build a table. And he'll and he has all the carpenter stuff, and he'll build the table, and he'll have the table delivered to your house, and he'll send you like step by step how to get your things out of the table. And I'm like, that guy just built a fucking table. Like I said, you have guys who like, hey man, I'm just gonna take the Appalachian Trail all the way for like a month, and you're like, that guy just walked for a month.
Yeah.
And what do I have on these guys? So those are the guys, those are the hobbies, and you're like, hey Adam, what do you do? I like to read. I'm like, okay, good for you.
Yeah.
But yeah, but they all had, and honestly, those things help in the mission. And those are the things that they look at you and they look for selection.
Yeah.
So if you're gonna deploy and you're saying, hey, you're a carpenter, you gotta be able to do carpenting shit.
Yeah.
For me, if I'm going and I'm saying, like I can't go and say, hey guys, I'm a private security guy. Okay, Mr. 5'1", 125 pounds, you can't be a private security guy. But I can be a driver.
Yeah.
I can be a guy who blends in. I'm very comfortable with going to any environment. I can go to, like during training, I went to areas where, this is after 9/11. And as an Arab looking guy, you go into a hotel, telling the lady working in the hotel, I need the layout of the hotel. And I need every exit, I need every camera, I need everything. Because I'm cased in the hotel. And it takes a talent. And it takes that very friendly, comfortable environment to make her feel comfortable, to give you the information. And the lady did. She gave me actually everything I asked about.
Speaking of that, I mean, another thing around this time frame I want to ask you, we're probably shooting forward a couple years from Iraq and Saddam, but being deployed to the Levant during the 2000s, what can you tell us about that?
So that was after Iraq, right? So one of the things too, during Iraq, what I talked about too in the book is Iraq was the cool things for the bad guys, the cool place for the bad guys to go. So when we were in Iraq, we start noticing, like I was helping with a lot of interrogations, start seeing people from Morocco, coming all the way from Morocco, coming all the way from Mali, through North Africa, all the way to Somalia, crossing to Yemen, from Yemen to Saudi, making it all the way to Iraq. Then we start seeing a lot of, this is during the beginning of what's known now as ISIS. Back then it used to be Al-Nusra Front. This is where it started. We start seeing all of these characters coming from everywhere, coming from Chechnya,
Yep.
coming from Bosnia. And you're like, I was in Bosnia a few years before, And I used to call it, those are Muslim lights. They don't know, they think Ramadan is 3 months. They didn't know anything about anything. And all of a sudden they go into fight.
Right.
So they got turned into extremists because of all of this. Then we start seeing, and we were like, okay, how are these people coming to Iraq? They coming from Africa to where, to here. Then we start deploying people. Like McChrystal said, it takes a network to catch a network or to defeat a network. So we start deploying people to West Africa, to East Africa, to the Levant. Then I was one of the first guys from my squadron to deploy. I was the first one to deploy to the Levant. And at that time, I go there, and the chief of station, my first day there, he's like, initially, so to go back, the unit said, hey man, the agency wanted some of you guys. So I'm going thinking, the agency asked for me, or they asked for us, and they sent me. I'm going there to a friendly environment. So I go there. In my second day, the chief gets me and this other guy from the other side of our unit. And he's like, hey man, I've never asked for you. I don't need you here. I have my own people. You have a month to prove why you should be here, or I'm sending you home. So I'm like, holy shit.
That's wild.
I just got a warning. If I don't prove myself within a month,
Yeah.
I'm going to go back to my unit with my tail between my legs and saying, hey guys, I got fucking kicked out of country.
Yeah.
But like I said, I went thinking, this is a friendly environment. These guys are like, they want me.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, I got to fucking work my ass off. So I start, this was, by the way, it was about 7-8 months after I was shot. So here I am, I'm still recovering from a gunshot wound. They sending me there to like, hey, this is a good place for you to recover. It's a decent, friendly environment, and the agency will be nice to you. Well, I go there and it's not. And then this is one of the extremely high threat CI places where you have surveillance left and right. You have surveillance most likely from the day I arrived. I walked to the embassy the first day with my diplomatic passport, and the Marine Guard is like, did you find this in the street? Because I looked like a local. And I'm like, this is not a friendly place, man. So nothing was going my way. So I was like, well, I gotta really work hard. I start developing like a target, start developing a target list, start doing things in the embassy, outside of the embassy. After a month, when we're supposed to go back to the chief to brief him, I go, me and this other guy from the organization, but from the other side. And the other guy's like, hey man, we got only 30 minutes with the chief. You go first, because it's gonna take you 5 minutes, then I'll brief. I said, all right. So I go. So I start briefing the guy, and my 5 minutes became 25 minutes. So he gets only 5 minutes, the other guy. After I finished the 25 minutes, the reason it was 25 minutes because the chief kept asking, how did you get this? How did you get that? Who else is in the network? How can we defeat this? How can we prosecute that? How did you really do this? And I was like, well, actually, I went in the street and I pretended like I'm a travel agency. And literally, I was like, hey, man, I work for a travel agency from Egypt, and I need to get to this location. One of the places we were looking for guys coming through that country, going to Iraq, and these guys were using very specific travel agencies in that country. And literally, I would go in the street and say, hey, man, I'm looking for this. Literally, I was like, ask. Because again,
You're asking the kebab guy.
I'm asking the kebab guy. Or I take a taxi, I'm like, hey, can you take me to this location? Because again, I blended in.
Right.
I looked like a native. I mean, I am a native, and I looked like a guy who's local. So after the month, when I showed the chief all of these things, and he's like, what else can you do? Because he did have requirements. He could not have anybody doing it. So we finish, and he sends a cable. He's like, I need 2 of these guys, not 1. So they they actually ended up adding 1 more guy from my squadron. Then a month after, I'm walking to the embassy in the morning. I lived really near there. So the door I walked through is like a door for people, and there is another gate for vehicles. So I walked in, I worked in the 3rd floor. By the time I made it to the 3rd floor, I hear an explosion. So we had a civilian engineer in the office I was working in. The guy goes down on his knees, pulled out his rosary, and he started praying. And he's like, please, God, make this a drill. The guy did what he knew what to do. And I was like, hey, dude, this is not fucking drill. This is an explosion for real. And then we hear gunfires. And where I'm at, there is a vault. So initially, your training kicks in. So we're like, okay, it's about 4 or 5 of us here. Close the vault, call home, say, hey, we might be going through destruction plan. We're going to destruct everything. It goes to your mind. The Nairobi, the Kenya, Tanzania embassy bombings. It goes to your mind the Tehran embassy, people being taken hostages. All of these things goes to your mind. And I'm there as a civilian. But I had an M4. We had our stuff shipped. There was another unit guy there with me. And I'm like, okay, if I open this vault door and walk out, and there is a Marine running, he's going to see an Arab guy.
Right.
That's the guy most likely. He asked him, did you find this passport in the street? He's going to find an Arab-looking guy with an M4. So I might get shot. And scenario 2, I open that door, and the bad guys are there because they took over the Marines, and I'm going to get shot. So I'm like, so I'm the enemy of both sides. I'm like, fuck. So finally, I'm like, you know what? I have no choice. I got to open that door, and I got to go downstairs. So I go downstairs to the defense attache's office. I find somebody talking, and he's under. What they tell you is like, there is an explosion, you go under the table. So everybody did what they're supposed to do. And then I hear somebody else talking. And I'm like, man, I'm not fucking gonna get shot again. Like in my mind, that's what I'm saying. So I hear somebody saying, did you get shot before? And somebody about to have a conversation with me. I'm like, this is not the time to have a conversation. So I found the other unit guy who go to the rooftop. The Marine who asked me like 2 months before, did you find that passport in the street? He's sitting there. Marines are very well disciplined, as you guys know. He has his weapon, and he comes. Me and the other guy are there on the rooftop as well. A couple of agency guys came with us, and the Marine looks at us, and he sees that we have really cool weapons with all the bells and whistles, and he's like, is either one of you guys outranked me? So the other guy outranked both of us. The other guy was a master sergeant. I was an E7 at that time. So the other guy, who's the coolest guy, and he was really cool, calm, Green Beret guy, unit guy, and he's like, I'm Master Sergeant so-and-so. I got you. The Marine just calms down. And the Marine is like, I see guys across the street with weapons. Should I shoot? And we're like, no, man. Those are the guards. They're shooting at the bad guys. So that firefight goes back and forth. The Master Sergeant finds a grenade, unexploded. He disarmed it. He threw it at the RSO. I think the RSO about shat in his fucking pants because he threw a grenade. So the whole thing lasted for about, I want to say like an hour. At the end, I put a lot more details about that in the book, but at the end, we hear this huge explosion. So the car the bad guys were in, that they were supposed actually to enter, to attack the embassy with, they had propane tanks. They were supposed to blow up the embassy. They didn't. And they didn't because they found the guy was driving that truck, small truck, found an old lady crossing the street. He didn't want to hit her. He avoided her, hit the pillar rather than the door. And then that firefight went back and forth. The local guards from the street, they saved us. Although hostile country, not friendly at all, but they did their job to protect the diplomatic mission.
I mean, a couple questions. I mean, I guess, first off, were you guys able to disrupt some of the terrorist rat lines that you were looking to interdict or identify in the country? And is that why the embassy got attacked? Was it because of that targeting?
So we were able to disrupt a lot of those. We were able to get guys taken out. We had guys get taken out in country. We had guys get taken out as soon as they went to Iraq. But I don't think it was related. I think it's just these guys. I mean, the embassy was in a very vulnerable location. Excuse me. They were in a very vulnerable locations. And I think it was more an attack against the local government not us. So they were trying to show the local government is weak.
Oh, I got you.
So and then it was an easy target. So I think that was the reason. I mean, nobody really knew exactly what was, but you gotta realize during that time when the Iraq War was going on, I mean, we had enemies all over the Middle East. I mean, everybody was like blaming us because I know some people agree or disagree. A lot of people like me in the military I don't think the Iraq War was justifiable. I think this was a bullshit thing happened, and there was no weapons of mass destruction.
Yeah.
There was no terrorists there. We did everything possible. Like, you gotta find any terrorist affiliation in Iraq. There was none.
Yeah.
After that, when the regime collapsed,
It drew them in.
then it drew them in because
Yeah.
it became the wild, wild west, and
Yeah.
that drew them in.
The other question I wanted to ask you about the particular deployment that I think would be interesting, and not to spark the big debate about what is tactical and what is strategic, but the CIA normally gathers strategic intelligence. The Army is oftentimes more interested in tactical intelligence, although there's some strategic missions there too. I just want to ask about your experience working out of the embassy with them, and like two different mentalities, from an Army guy to an agency officer.
So I think it was very, very personality driven. So, for example, in that mission that I was just talking about in the Levant, the agency guys were super cool. We felt like a family because we were all in the same shithole together.
Right.
We got each other backs. Hey, you had surveillance today, so if you don't tell me about it, the guy who surveilled you today might surveil me tomorrow. So we were sharing a lot of information. Look at East Africa. East Africa, we were going to Somalia together. There was like a Black Hawk team. It's called the Black Hawk team.
Yeah.
So we were going to Somalia together. Again, personality driven. We had a guy who was a Black Hawk team leader, who was a former Marine. He's like, I know better than all of you guys, so fuck all of you guys. You're gonna do what I tell you to do. So he would grab his phone and openly call internationally, talk about things, and we're like, hey man, you shouldn't be talking about this. Then fast forward, there was another guy after him who was, I think, used to be a high school teacher in New York, who came and became the team leader. Really calm, really smart, really, again, extremely personality driven. But there was some competition there.
Sure.
There was like, I'm JSOC, you're CIA, or he's like, I'm CIA, screw you. So it was, and for us, we were able to operate under Title 50 and Title 20. We're able to operate under both. So one of them is like, you operate clandestinely. So for the unit,
Title 10.
Title 10.
Yeah.
So Title 10 and Title 50. So we were able to operate under both.
It's it's an interesting thing that your unit is able to conduct covert operations, clandestine operations, or conventional military
correct.
operations as well.
So it depends under which title you were in and who's on top. Is it CIA or us? And how we're gonna do this together. But there was some deployments where we worked extremely well together. Some other deployments where we never, again, I might be biased, but we never hated or disliked them or disliked working with them. But it was like when you go in a mission and you come back and the CIA guy changed the door combo. And you're like, dude, I thought we were one team.
That's super passive aggressive.
Exactly. And you're like,
was there ever any correlation for you between the age of like the person running the agency's operation? Like were younger, if there was a younger guy there, was he more or less, easier or harder to work with?
yeah, I think that, no.
No.
Again, personality driven.
Yeah.
There was like some younger guys were really, really easygoing, nice to work with. You would think older guys would be more mature and they'll be like, okay, we mission focused. But then you have older guys who are like, who's gonna get credit for this?
Right.
In one of the deployments, one of the missions, we had a guy who pretended to be sick. He stayed in the hotel room. All he did is he fucking ate pizza all night. Next day, and he's like, I'm sick. And next day he wrote a cable, and I was like, dude, we detained the guy that night. Me and another guy went out with the locals. We got the guy. I mean, we did the whole thing. He just stayed in the hotel room. but he wrote the best cable ever. And I was
Yeah.
like, that guy, man. I was like, dude, you either have a very wild imagination or you did something I didn't see. But we were not honestly interested in taking credit.
Yeah.
We were like, he wanted to take credit for it. So be it. So 90% of the military guys I worked with, like on our field, and you guys know it and being in the same category of, dude, I just want to get the mission done.
Yeah.
Who takes credit for it? I don't care.
Now, did most of the agency people that you work with, did they have a military background, or did some of it? Did it vary quite a bit?
It varied, and the guys that was hard to work with were the guys who never had military background. There was a guy, one of them. Again, we're in a very, very rough country, and he and I going out doing a lot of things together. And he and I like discussing something, and he's like, I think, and I want to just phrase it how he said it, because he's a smart guy, and he's like, I never been wrong, but I was wrong only once, and that one time I was mistaken. And as soon as he told me that, I was driving. I pulled over on the side of the road. I said, dude, say this one more time, I'm gonna fucking kick you out of the car.
Yeah. If we're both on patrol in Vietnam, only one of us is making it to the LZ, right?
Yeah.
And then I told him, when you look, who looks local? Me, not you. You are a 6'4", 6'3", white guy in a country. The tallest guy most likely is my height.
Yeah.
So just say this one more time.
Yeah.
But again, and then you realize, and the guy was like, he's like, dude, I came from a culture where you have to show that.
Right.
And you have to show
Right.
that how good you are. And I was like, dude, but we here together, that we might die together or live together.
Yeah.
So you cannot tell me that you've never been wrong, because when I tell you we're gonna make a left here, we're making the left here.
Yeah.
But again, that guy was never in the military. So I've seen that, and I've seen the guys who are like, who got your back 100%.
Yeah.
There was a guy with me in Iraq, and he's like ground branch guy, older guy, and honestly, I was like, he came out with me a few times. He did a lot of things, and when you see the guy, you're like, man, that guy, with the experience he had, with the knowledge he had, I should be saluting him every time I see him. But he was like, hey, brother, what do you need?
Yeah.
So you have, it's personality driven.
Big mix. Yeah.
The other thing I don't want to gloss over and miss is, as you mentioned, there's this incident where you get shot.
Yeah.
What happened there? Where were you and what happened?
So I was in Africa, and we were doing a lot of things in Somalia, in and out of Somalia, and the exact reason why I got shot, honestly, nobody will ever know. When we put things together, again, we have an analytical mind, and so a week before, we were in Somalia, and there was an ambush set up for us. We got really lucky that we were supposed to go land and get from point A to point B. They set up the ambush in the way. Well, when we landed, again, this is 100% luck, that we had some equipment in the airfield where we were landing that we haven't serviced for a while. And I said, guys, I think we should service it. And I want to stay here to service the equipment, me and another guy. So the rest of the team said, no, we're not going to leave you, we'll just stay with you. Way out of the plan, and this is something just happened in the last minute. So we stayed. So the Al-Shabaab guys who were ambushing us, they were like, they expecting us to land and they move. Well, we didn't move. And we stayed for about an hour messing with the equipment. They thought we're not going to point B. So they started coming our way. So the local guys we were dealing with, they had checkpoints. The Al-Shabaab guys started running over the checkpoints, killing a couple of guys getting radios. They called the guys we were with, hey man, they're attacking you. You need to leave. The pilot that we had at that time, local pilot from the area, again, this is not a military aircraft, this is a local. So the pilot, he understands Somali, very calm usually, but all of a sudden he's no longer calm. He's like, we need to leave now. And I've never seen that guy that way. And I'm like, if he's saying we need to leave now, we need to leave now. It was 6 of us, 6 U.S. guys, and the pilot. So we ran to the aircraft. We grabbing our equipment. Commo guy from the agency grabbing his equipment, dropping shit. Case officer wearing fucking sandals for some reason because he thought he was going on vacation in Somalia. So we made it to there, and we took our equipment with us. When we took our equipment with us, we start getting through the intercepts.
Mm-hmm.
And basically these guys were, hey, 6 white pigs just landed, ambush, do this, do that. Voice recognition of some of these guys. One of them was Somali American.
Interesting.
Yeah. So the immigrant communities here are a lot smaller than a lot of people think. People know each other. I know your cousin knows his wife, and his wife knows my sister. So 4 or 5 days after, one of the linguists that we have, who's Somali American, clear, TSSCI guy, calls me. So that happened, the ambush happened on a Saturday. Or the attempt of an ambush happened on a Saturday. Tuesday evening, I get a call from my linguist. I was the team leader at that time. And he's like, I need to come to your house now, immediately. This is Tuesday night. I'm like, 9 o'clock at night. And I was like, can it wait till tomorrow? And he's like, nope, I have to come now. So he comes, and apparently the wife of the Somali American was involved in the attack. Somehow, I think, I don't know, like if his bank account got frozen, something happened to him. His wife knows the sister of the linguist. The wife is in the country we're in. She calls the linguist. She meets him. They have dinner. She gives him a phone number. She's like, my husband would like to talk to the CIA. The guy knows we don't work for the CIA. The guy freaks out. He leaves her, comes straight to my house. So that's Tuesday. Thursday, we go out on a mission in the morning. We come back. And then I leave the house. Later that day, I come back. There are 3 guys by the door of my house. One of them shot me immediately. Again, people can say, well, it was a robbery.
Nah.
Possible. And then people can go and say, well, when you put all of these elements together,
Yeah.
there is possibly an ambush.
Right.
Because you were getting ambushed literally a week before.
Right.
As a matter of fact, not even a week, 5 days before. So Saturday, Tuesday, Thursday. So Thursday night I get shot. And again, I get out of my car. If a guy robbing you, he's not going to shoot you right away because he doesn't want to shoot you.
Right.
He just want to take your money.
Yeah.
I'm driving a very expensive car for that country. Didn't try to take the car, didn't try to take my money. Didn't take my watch. Took my phone and took some IDs I had in my pocket.
But they didn't, well, first off, obviously they didn't give you the coup de grace. And
No.
did they try to kidnap you?
No, nothing.
That's like very, very weird.
Exactly.
is
I get out of the car, literally. We live in a compound. It's about, our house is about 50 meters away from the gate. So even if the guy came after me to the gate, he would have not made it with me. I mean, I'm driving, he's walking or running.
Yeah.
He would have not made it with me. No, he was there. And so I saw a gun in his hand. And he squeezed the trigger. And I was like, okay, I didn't feel it. So I was like, he missed. It's a ricochet. I felt like, a very tiny pinch. So I was like, okay, he missed. So we'll get in a fist fight. Trying to take the gun. He's trying to get off me. I'm trying to choke him. So we get into this for a few minutes. Then one guy comes in then punch me with the bottom of his pistol. So the other guy had a gun as well. So I get punched in the chin, and I'm like, fuck, that hurts. Then finally they get the guy off my hands, they take off. I knock in the door. Well, I put my hand on my stomach, and I feel like, warm liquid.
Yeah.
And it's dark. And I'm like, fuck, I got shot. So I knock on the door, get my buddy to open the door. It was me and another guy living in the same house. And I was like, hey man, open the door, I got shot. And he heard all of this shebang going on outside, and he's like, I didn't know what was going on, so I wasn't going to open the door. And I don't blame him.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm like, okay, you hear all of this.
Yeah, if it's a local thing, like.
You don't know
Yeah,
what's going on,
yeah.
and it's happening right in front of your door.
Yeah.
Then I was like, okay, call the embassy. Let's get things in the right process. And I think, and you said this, you're like, I'm not gonna die. So in my mind, I'm like, I can't fucking die.
Yeah.
My dad passed away like less than a year ago. I just can't die.
Yeah.
My wife is young. I have a newborn. She's like less than 2 years old. So I don't know what, I think your training takes over, things take over, you don't know what's going on. I'm like, let's call the embassy. We call the embassy, we call post one, send an ambulance. It's Africa, no ambulance. I sit and I sit and I sit. And then I sit down and I think I pass out. But me thinking I didn't pass out. My buddy's like, hey man, you keep passing out. So I get a towel, stop the bleeding. Then finally, like I think I wake up and I'm like, where's the fucking ambulance? There's no ambulance. So I stand up. I'm like, I can't, because every time I sit down, I feel like I'm passing out. So by then, the compound we're living in, the guards are there. There is like, a lot of people around. What's going on? So I look at one of the guards. I'm like, do you have a car? And he's like, yes. I'm like, okay, you're taking me to the hospital. My buddy, who's like, most likely still have some blood from me on his shirt, he's like, man, I gotta change. I can't go to the hospital like this. And again, he's not thinking. And I wanna, like, now you think about it, I was like, dude, you're going to the fucking hospital. It's like,
You're going to the hospital with the guy who shot in the gut.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm like, you're not going out in a date.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I jump in this truck, and the guard driving me, it's a pickup truck. I'm in the front. I'm sitting next to him. And I think the guy hit like every pothole in the city. And then you start feeling it. You start feeling like your guts moving. Your guts are like shaking. And you're like, okay. I'm like, it's Africa. I can't die. So you make it to the hospital, and then I'm trying to open the door, and I can't. And I tell the guard, I tell the guy who's driving, I'm like, dude, unlock the door. And he's like, it's unlocked. But I think I lost enough blood.
Yeah.
And I lost enough
you were
Yeah,
strength.
you're losing strength. Yeah.
And I can't open the door.
Yeah.
Finally, the guy comes out and he opens it. He's like, it's unlocked. He opens it. I get out. By then, they have this, I don't know what they call it. It's like that bed with the wheels.
The gurney?
The gurney. And it's very high. And I'm like, dude, bring it down. And he's like, it's broken.
It's not an obstacle course.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's not made for short people.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm like, dude, bring it down. And he's like, it's broken. I'm like, how the fuck am I going to get on it? So I step on the side of the truck and I jump. And again, you feel like your gut's just coming out. Long story short, we go inside. X-ray machine is broken, so you have to sit up. So I ask the nurse, I'm like, do you see an exit wound? That's in the emergency room now. And she's like, yes. I'm like, okay, if you draw a line between the entry wound and the exit wound, what do you think it hit? She's like, your kidney. I'm like, oh, thank God I have two of those. I mean, literally, I was like, but you're thinking at that time, you think you're going to a hospital here in the US, so they ask you, what's your name, what's your social security?
Yeah.
So I'm thinking of all of these things. So what's my social security number? Luckily, they don't ask. But I remember. I mean, I memorized all of these things. But again, it's not me.
Right.
It's you going there.
Right.
And then, so I tell that I'm like, hey guys, don't put me to sleep. I want to know what's going on. Because I didn't trust anybody. I had trust issues.
Yeah, I can see.
I'm like, so finally, my buddy comes, the embassy, the embassy doctor comes. The embassy doctor had another doctor with him who's Pakistani, Indian, British educated, but not local to the country we're in. But he's one of those guys that you look at him and you feel calm. He exhibited this sort of like confidence. And you're like, okay, this guy. And he's like, hey, we're going to put you to sleep. I'm going to open you up. I'm going to clean you from the inside, put you back together, and you'll wake up. So my way of asking the guy, I'm a very proud guy, like I'm a JSOC guy, so I'm not going to cry. But my way of asking the guy, am I going to die or not, is like, am I going to see you again?
Yeah.
And the doctor was like, he held my hand, squeezed it, and he's like, yes, you will. And I'm like, okay, you guys can put me to sleep. So they tell you, like, you put this thing, they tell you to count to 10. They're like, hey, we're taking you to the theater. My buddy who's with me is like, what fucking theater are you taking him to? And it's the British way of saying the operating room.
Yeah.
So I was in, they took me, they operated in me. I think they told me it took about 5-6 hours.
Yeah.
So they opened me up. they cleaned it, I didn't lose my kidney.
Did it go through your kidney?
No. It
Okay.
went through my intestines, through and through twice.
Wow.
Wow.
So I lost half of my intestine.
Mm-hmm.
The exit wound was half an inch away from my spine.
Wow.
So the doctor comes in the morning when I wake up. And I wake up and there are a lot of people. There are like, guys from Navy SEALs that they were deploying with us. They are there. They making fun of my stomach because it's that fucking big. And the guy was like, man, I'm glad you're not working out. And I'm like, dude, it's full of air. Local doctors there, I didn't know who they are. But the local pilot sent his brother who's a doctor. So a lot of people came. And then there was a Navy corpsman. He was with us. And the Navy corpsman was one of the guys helped them to move me from. So I stayed in the ER for, not in the ER, in the intensive unit, the ICU. So I was in the ICU for a day. Then they moved me to a regular room. When they moved me to a regular room, the unit command, they called me like, hey, we have a plan. We'll medevac you to Germany, to launch tool. We'll fly your wife there. We'll swap docs. Your wife will know it's you. And I said, nope, don't tell my wife anything. First of all, I cannot move because you don't know how much your core area means.
Yeah.
You cannot really move. I mean, you are in pain.
Yeah.
Then you are in severe pain. The doctor who operated in me believed in ethical medicine. He didn't believe in painkillers. So he's like, you heal better when you're not taking painkillers. So I was not on any painkillers for like about a couple of weeks. But I told him not to tell my wife. And that's, there are like step by step when there is an instant, like in the instant report, okay, this is what happened, notify next of kin, notify this, notify that, there are steps. So at that time, I do appreciate the unit command, like they actually honored my wish. My wife till now is pissed off
Yeah.
that we didn't tell her. She didn't know till after I came home.
But the thing is, I mean, I get it because there's nothing she can do about it. And it's just going to spin her, put her into a spin. Like, it's sort of that no harm, no foul. Look, like, I'm here, I'm home.
I
everything's
agree
fine.
with you 100% because to me, I was like, if somebody told her I've been shot
Yeah.
and I'm okay,
Yeah.
she will not, she's like, did he lose a rib? Did he lose his arm? No matter what they would have told her,
Right.
she would have been worried.
Yeah.
And I didn't want her to be worried. And then, but the unit had the right people ready to go tell her your husband's
Right.
dead.
Yeah.
I mean, they did prepare everything. It's like, am I going to live or die?
Yeah.
I keep surprising people by not dying.
Did you, one of the things that I've always found comforting is the military sense of humor and sort of the, okay, you're okay, let's be callous about it. In the sense of, for me, that's always been easier to deal with than people's true like sympathy, than their genuine sympathy. So like when the SEALs are around you fucking with you about like your belly and stuff, how did that feel for you?
Honestly, it was really funny. I mean, I like so the guy, one of them, they were great guys. I mean, the two guys, they were there at that time. Those are the guys who were involved in the almost ambush with us. We were not supposed to take rifles to Somalia, but we had it, they had it. We had it hidden, they had it hidden. We didn't tell them, they didn't tell us. But then when they realized that we're doing something we're not supposed to be doing, we all covered for each other.
Yeah.
Then they came, they made fun of me. I was like, let's just fucking laugh. And
Yeah.
then one of them, like a lot of us at that time and in the age, and you can relate to this, Red Bull. We used to drink Red Bull up to the fucking wazoo.
Yeah.
So these guys, he comes to visit me, one of them comes to visit me in the hospital, and he brings me a pack of Red Bull. And I was like, dude, I cannot eat or drink. I'm on IVs. I have a hole in my stomach. So he's like, oh, I didn't know that. So he sits down, he's like, I'll fucking drink it. And he grabs it and he drinks it. And we laugh about it and this whole thing. But yeah, the sense of humor, honestly, once you pass
Yeah.
that hey, could have been one of us going away.
Yeah.
Well, you're still on Earth, let's just fucking make fun of you.
Yeah. Yeah.
When I left the hospital, they had a picture of my stomach, and I looked pregnant. Whoever has that picture, I would give him like $50 if he give it to me. I don't know, they kept it, I don't know where it went, but they had the picture with that and a purple heart drawn on my stomach in the picture. I mean, they really made fun of it.
Yeah.
And I did appreciate it.
Yeah.
I was like, huh, whatever, cool.
Did the Army give you a Purple Heart for that one?
It took the Army a bit to...
I bet it did. I bet it did.
because the Army, they were like, it's funny. So a Purple Heart is not an award, it's an entitlement. They submitted 4187. So the unit was it an active enemy or not? And I was like, guys, I think somebody's shooting somebody.
It felt like it.
Yeah.
It felt like an active
He
enemy.
didn't feel like a friend. I mean,
I was like, I think he's an enemy, but you guys can define that however. So it took the Army about 4 years.
Wow.
that's
man.
wild. I mean, it's really wild because, think back to like the SF guys in El Salvador. Like some of those guys still haven't gotten Purple Hearts from that.
Yeah, it takes decades
Yeah.
sometimes.
The Army regulations is always in favor of the service member. So if it's 50-50 an active enemy or not, they lean towards an active enemy. I think it was just, and I don't want to badmouth any like leadership, but I think it was lack of understanding of the leadership at that time.
Yeah.
Once the paperwork was submitted to JSOC, it was approved within 24 hours. There was there is no question about it. I mean,
Yeah.
you got shot, you lost half of your intestine, you were deployed in a military mission in support of counter-terror. I mean, all of these things.
Right.
Together, it's no question about it.
Out of curiosity, and this might be a topic you don't want to talk about, and I totally understand, but the Somali American, like, was there ever any repercussion for that?
No, I mean, the guy, honestly, he did what he thought was right. I mean, I never... Here's the thing, God rest his soul, the guy passed away a few years ago. I visited him in the hospital here. He didn't think he was doing anything wrong. It's just, you have a linguist who's not trained, who's not told anything, and he got met just by the wife of a terrorist. So he freaks out. So I was like, maybe if I was in his position, most likely I would have done the same.
No, but I don't mean him. But
Oh, you mean the other guy?
The other one.
I don't know. Honestly, I have no
Yeah.
idea. I hope he went to jail,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but I don't know.
There were over 12 Somali Americans that joined Al-Shabaab, and I think most of them got killed over there. There's even one event where they pulled SSE off a vehicle interdiction, and the SSE led them back to the United States, and the FBI had to go check up on that.
So the guy we have in chapter 1 in the book, what we used to see a lot of. I mean, I don't want to badmouth any nationality. We used to see a lot of guys from the Somali American community they would fly to a neighboring country in Africa, take buses or whatever, go to training camps. During the Bush administration, we had confirmed Al-Qaeda or Al-Shabaab or Al-Qaeda East Africa training camps.
Yeah.
And we could not hit any of them because the administration at that time said we have to prove there are no Americans there.
Right.
And I was like, the joke was like, okay, we'll just have a guy stand in the gate of the training camp
Yeah, checking
and
passports.
check passports. So we were like, there is no way you can validate that. All we know is
How can you know for sure?
exactly.
You know, how can you be 100%?
And honestly, all you know is that all of these terrorist training camps that you see on TV, like the guys jumping in monkey bars and all these, that was there. That was what was going on. And
Right.
you're like, it's a terrorist training camp.
Hit it.
Eventually, they're gonna try to come and hit us.
Yeah.
Right.
So how do you stop that from happening? You hit it.
Right.
Well, maybe there are Americans there. Well, those Americans are gonna come back and fucking kill you.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So, what a lot of people didn't realize, the Obama administration actually went extremely aggressive
Yeah.
against those guys. Again, I'm not a lawyer, so
Yeah, we also took out Adam Gamal in Pakistan.
no, not me.
I hope not.
Adam,
I know who you're talking about.
you know who?
Yeah,
It's
I know
another
who you're
Adam.
talking- Yeah,
I'm sorry.
yeah. No, that's okay. I know who you're talking about, but we took out Al-Malki in Yemen, who's a U.S.-born citizen.
Yeah. I imagine, it's a very delicate legal issue because, the U.S. government just can't randomly put out hits on other Americans or whatever. Like there's, the rule of law and all that stuff. But also, I mean, hey, if you're
Rolling in a
if
terror
you're
camp.
kicking it with terrorists,
it ain't Disneyland.
Yeah.
Exactly. And honestly, I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not
Yeah.
touching that topic.
Yeah.
But all I know is from my experience during that time, during the Obama administration, we went after Al Qaeda extremely hard.
Yeah.
So if anybody will say, again, from my small, humble opinion, I think the Obama administration broke Al Qaeda's back.
Yeah.
They really went aggressive. People can criticize them. People can say he's the drone president. He's this. To me, I'm like, okay, if you are a guy who's in a training camp in the middle of nowhere in Somalia.
Yeah, I was almost Adam Gadon.
Yes. See, one letter,
Yeah.
2 letters.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like before he even started his term, he locked in that Nobel Peace Prize. So
Yeah.
he was like, hold my beer and watch this.
But again, I'm not going into politics in this,
Yeah.
but I look at it as some people like criticize Trump
Sure.
for certain things.
Sure.
Am I a fan of Trump? No. Did he do good things as a president? Yes. Am I a fan of George Bush and everything he did? I was really on board for the Afghanistan thing.
Right.
Iraq, totally off.
Yeah.
So I don't think any president would be right in every decision.
Sure.
But what I saw personally, during the Bush administration, we had target packages, ready. Like you would not think any president, especially a wartime president, especially a president during the 9/11, he would not go after them. He didn't.
Yeah.
Which a lot of people are like, well, he's just a cowboy. He was going after everybody. He didn't.
Yeah.
I'm sure he did it for the right reasons and for him and for the country at that time, where we went after like a lot of these terrorist training camps in Somalia. Obama went after it,
Yeah.
and he's like,
Bush
"You have a target package approved, go for it."
Yeah, Bush also waffled hard on like the Iranians, like Iranians working inside Iraq and stuff like that. And it's like, it's one of those things that you're left wondering, at that level, who's advising him, what information, like why are these decisions being
Yeah.
made? But yeah, Obama, like, I mean, his administration tore like.
They went
They
went
tore it
full
up.
speed, honestly, after Al Qaeda. I think the Bin Laden target package, he takes credit for it 100% because knowing what I know about the target package,
Yeah.
a lot of presidents would have not taken the risk. I mean,
Yeah.
this would have cost him his presidency. This
Yeah.
would have been Desert One again, the Iran one
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
But he went for it.
Yeah.
And again, I would go and say, how many presidents, including the current president, I mean,
Yeah.
Biden was in that room and he said,
Yeah,
Don't go.
We talked to Mike Vickers on the show, and about how Obama told them stop making up numbers as far as like, is it 80%, is it 30%? It's like it's a flip of the coin.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. So again, I give the guy credit for going after Al Qaeda full speed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Another thing I wanted to ask you about is, during your time in the unit, you did a number of singleton missions. And that's like something very unique. Not many soldiers, even in highly elite units, do that type of mission. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about your experience and what is that like to be behind enemy lines, so to speak, by yourself?
It's terrifying. I'm
Yeah.
not gonna lie to you. So if anybody tells you like, man, I was this Superman, I was doing all of these things, I'm not scared. No, I was fucking terrified. First one, when I was in Iraq and I went out of the green zone. Taking a car out of the green zone, totally by myself. This was a mission needed by not just the military, but 2 other government agencies. They needed that, but it was going after like internet cafes, supporting Sunni extremists. And you're going out, and you're like, okay, how is this gonna be? And how is it gonna be when I'm coming back into the green zone? Because you have maybe 4th ID soldiers manning the gate.
Right.
And they see an Arab-looking guy driving the local car
Yeah.
coming back. So that was like the first one. So you go out, you kind of like, okay, how's this gonna be? What am I gonna say? Where do I park the car that I'm driving? How am I gonna approach? And then A lot of people will tell you, like, just make sure you have all of these plans. Well, you can plan.
Right, but you're still out there on
Yeah.
your
You're
own.
still out there in your own, and I'm not sure how many. You can if what to the wazoo, and you're not going to cover all the scenarios.
Right.
So I'm lucky I can think on my own feet fast sometimes. So I go out the first time, and I have a backpack. I park far away. I had a Glock 26, which is a smaller one, in my back. I have a concealable body armor, and I'm wearing a shirt, kind of like loose, so you cannot see it. And I go to this internet cafe. Well, I walk around for a bit. I grab a shawarma. I'm like, let me just get something to eat. You gotta be local. So I grab a shawarma, and I'm walking around, and I go to this internet cafe. The owner of the internet cafe is a Sunni extremist. And that's the guy that we going after.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, let me see how I can walk in there. So I walk in there, speaking Arabic, but I spoke Egyptian. At that time, they were building the first GSM network in Iraq, and it was built by an Egyptian company. So they were Egyptian engineers there. I did not think that I'm not gonna take credit and tell you, well, I thought that far ahead. No, I go there and I'm not thinking like. But I talked to the guy. I'm like, hey, I want to use the internet. And the guy's like, huh, you're from Egypt. Do you work for the phone company? I'm like, yes. And the guy's like, we don't have good signal here. And he grabs one of these old Nokia phones. And I'm like, you know what? That's why I'm doing this survey to figure out where are the areas they need cell towers.
Mm-hmm.
And I take my equipment out of my backpack and I put it in the desk next to the guy. And I'm like, that's why I have this equipment to check where we don't have signals. And now my collection equipment is sitting on the desk with the guy. Then I start feeling comfortable. Then I start telling the guy what happened to, we're not gonna drink tea. The guy orders tea, we sit down, we talk. I take my stuff, I'm supposed to do something to the desktop the guy has there. I do what I'm supposed to do as I'm talking with him. Very normal. Finish that, go back. So I did this a few times after that. Then, okay, it's a war zone. I can call, I can have a squadron of Delta coming in and saving my ass if these guys kidnap me. Then it gets a lot worse when you are deploying to a regular area where you cannot have a Glock, you
Right.
cannot have a body armor, you cannot have any of those things. The Levant areas, for example, I would go out by myself and do things by myself. And when you are there, you're like, and sometimes in those areas too, like to go back to Iraq, you are, if the bad guys from, like if a terrorist organization or the bad guys catch you, you're gonna get double whammy because they're gonna be like, you're not just an American soldier, you're an American soldier and an Arab.
Right.
Then I don't think they're gonna kill me easily. They'll torture the fuck out of me.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, you're going back to the base and you have, again, a fourth ID guy standing there and he sees this Arab-looking guy and he's like, he could shoot me anytime. So every time you're going out, it's the same thing with the embassy, the Marine could have shot me. So every time you're doing something,
Yeah, it's dangerous.
it's dangerous and you have those things. And I always had those things. And I used to have fucking dreams, like about me getting kidnapped or captured and how am I gonna be tortured?
Yeah.
And I'm like, do I know enough verses from the Quran to convince these guys they should spare me? So you do all of this, it's in your head, it's in your mind all the time. And it was in my mind all the way. It's in my mind till now, honestly. And that's
Yeah.
a lot of people like, well, this guy said his height, his weight. He gave enough information about himself to be using a pseudonym. And I'm like, what, you fucking walking around the street looking at every 5'1" brown guy
Yeah.
saying that might be him? So I'm like, guys, use some fucking common sense. But I put it in the book. I was like, the guys who worked with me, none of them had any doubt in his mind that it's me. I'm not hiding from you.
Right.
I'm sitting here with you guys. I'm
Right.
not hiding from you.
Right.
I'm hiding from a guy might be walking down the street here, and he's like, hey, that's the studio where these guys are recording. Or I'm hiding from, I travel a lot.
Yeah.
I'm protecting my family. I have 2 daughters and a wife.
Yeah.
My wife worked for the government for 15, 16 years. So as a family, I wanted to make sure
Yeah,
that we
yeah.
are protected. At the same time, with social media now, you can connect the dots and people can connect me, real me, to somebody who knows you, then to you, then to you. It's a 6 degree of
Sure.
separation.
Yeah.
So
Sure.
it's not that hard.
Sure.
But yeah, those singleton missions, from protecting an ambassador in West Africa that she had death threats against her, to going after the guys who were in charge of the foreign fighter pipeline, going to Iraq, to going after bad guys who were going to training camps in the Gulf countries, like into Yemen or Somalia or the Horn of Africa area, or going to West Africa and coming from West Africa. So there was some singleton missions where either I was going totally by myself from the beginning, including going to a North African country, and I flew for fucking ever to get there, and I was taking a diplomatic pouch, like a non-pro carry with me. And you go through all of these things, and if anybody who went through that, it's pain in the ass, because you go through airports, and I'm flying through France with this diplomatic pouch. They're not supposed to get x-rayed. So here in the US, they take you through, they take it through away from the x-ray. Well, in France, the guys doing security are different than the guys who are in charge of this, the metal detector. So the police, I guess, in charge of the metal detector. So they sit me aside till they bring the police, which took about 15, 20 minutes. So I'm sitting aside, and the non-pro carry, the pouch, is an orange bag. Obviously, I put it in a duffel bag, but the police, they want to see the seal, so I have to take the orange bag out. So here I am sitting on the side with a big-ass orange bag,
Yeah.
waiting for the police to come and deactivate the x-ray machine and the metal detector so they can take me through. So I sat for about 15, 20 minutes. This is a singleton mission. What I have in the diplomatic pouch is equipment I'm going to use in addition to weapons. So here you are. You're going through that in France. They stop everything, and then I go through. And for the diplomatic pouches, you cannot put it in a check-in luggage. You have to keep it with you, and you cannot fucking sleep, by the way. So it's a horrible thing. Then I'm going to check in finally, and then some of the people were going through the X-ray with me are in the same flight as me. So they're looking at this Arab-looking guy
Like, what's up? Yeah.
Yeah.
with this orange bag that they stopped this metal detector for him. This is something weird that people don't see. So I'm getting all of these nasty looks. And then the lady, she's like, hey, by the way, your pouch doesn't fit in the overhead compartment. You have to buy a seat. So I have to buy a business class seat for this bag to sit next to me. I go all the way, I land. I was supposed to link up with a unit coming from Germany. The unit was coming from Germany. They brought some maps and some things that the host country did not approve. They shipped them back. So by the time I went through all of these things and I landed there, mission was canceled.
It seems so weird to me, or lazy on the part of somebody. And I don't know if it's the unit or the planners or the leadership or wherever, that the end user, the operator, the person who is traveling an alias and everything else is carrying anything official with them, and that there aren't couriers that are, you know, ferrying that stuff for meetups or drops someplace else.
Yeah, no, usually actually we pouch those things.
Yeah.
But this time, because I was in that country and I did a mission there for 2 weeks. And as I was getting ready to leave, the chief station in that country, who was a very anti-JSOC in the beginning, who was like, this guy is the right guy for the mission. I have another mission coming up. I want him. So he sent a cable, like basically requesting an operative or an operator with the following criteria. And when I came back, it was a Wednesday, and the unit command met me and they were like, hey, what did you do? And I thought I did something wrong. And they were like, this chief station wrote a cable. The only thing he left out is your name. But we cannot send anybody other than you. And literally, I landed.
Yeah.
So I think I landed on a Wednesday. I had to fly out again on a Friday. So this, because it was a very short turnaround, I had to carry the stuff.
I see.
But when I landed there, because the unit I was going to link up with, they were going to do something, and I was going to be part of it for that mission. Again, you are a singleton, that you're going to be with another group who don't know what you do, who going to look at me like I'm a guy who speaks with an accent. You look different, but you are told you are part of us. So those are the challenges that I had to go through all the time.
Because it's so compartmentalized.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And honestly, like I said, and after we did all of these things, they were like, yeah, man, mission is canceled because the other group just got sent back. You can spend 2 days and then you can fly back. So then they pouched everything back.
I think it's interesting because you talk about this. We've talked about a little bit on the show, but you talk about sort of the fear of being around the enemy, but you've also talked about like crossing friendly lines, and I don't know if civilians realize just how dangerous that is for anybody who is wearing civilian clothes. I mean, it was not super uncommon for guys in JSOC or other elements to get their cars shot out from underneath them by an 18-year-old 11 Bravo on a 240, even when they're like showing their American flags, the little
It happened.
signals.
It happened to us in Tikrit.
Yeah.
Us and me and a group of Delta guys were coming back into the base.
Yeah,
In Tikrit, and we got shot at.
Yeah.
We were lucky the guy couldn't fucking shoot.
yeah,
So he shot on top of our cars. But that's the shooting. Then me coming back from missions, being pulled in the secondary in the
Yeah.
airport.
yeah,
Again, when I was wearing my uniform walking to Starbucks, I have 20 people want to pay for my coffee. But coming back from a mission, after being there for 4 or 5 months, actually either being part of bad guys taken out, protecting the country, then a TSA agent pulls me aside, not a TSA, an immigration agent, pulled me aside to ask me, if I was born in the U.S., why do I have an accent? And what I was doing.
Yeah.
And you get asked all of these questions, and then you have a get out of jail free card.
Sure.
But any guy in our community, if you use it, you fail.
yeah,
Right.
Right.
You break cover.
You
right,
break cover.
right.
So yeah.
Talk to us then about, you left the unit at a certain point. You had a few more assignments in the Army before you retired, right?
Yep. So I left the unit in 2011. I retired in 2016. I stayed in the DASER system, which is the closed army system.
It's where it protects the identities of
Exactly.
people who are in clandestine
So
roles.
I spent 21 years in the military. 16 years out of those, my records are classified, redacted, classified. So when I get asked for my HR record, my NCRs, my reports, you're gonna find this guy scored this much in PT, and then the rest of the stuff he did blank, and was successful in blank, and deployed to blank to accomplish blank. So you cannot use this in anything. Then after that, I went to another DASER system unit. I spent some time overseas. We're not gonna say where. That was more, again, another sensitive thing. But then I didn't retire till 2016. So you can do the math. 2011 to 2016, I did 5 years outside of the unit doing other things that we didn't say anything about in the book because I think it would have been redacted. And it would have invited another organization to go through the book and redact more shit.
Right.
So I intentionally left it out.
Can you tell us what the review process was? What was like for you with this?
Of course I can if you have time.
Oh. Send it.
So the review process. So I wanted to make sure I'm doing it right from day one. I did, without saying anybody's name, but I did contact people from the organization to say, guys, I'm writing a book. The book will go through the legal process. I don't want to say what they said, what I said, and back and forth, but we ended up going. So I was like, I don't want to go to jail. I'm the first guy who was in operational status in the unit to write a book. There are other books we've written about the unit. So I checked with my co-author. I checked with my agent. I said, hey guys, I wanted to have a lawyer. They were like, Mark Zaid. That's your guy.
Yeah.
So somebody did an introduction, contacted Mark. I said, this is what... Mark is a super smart guy, great lawyer in the area. He's like the best in the country in the area. Mark was like, don't tell me anything about the book. I don't want to know. I cannot know. But this is the process. So Mark contacted DOD and he said, hey, I have a guy who wrote a book, and this is the manuscript. This is what we have. Mark didn't have the manuscript, obviously. I wrote the book on a standalone laptop. And I told the organization, actually, I said, if you guys want the laptop, you can have it. So a laptop was never connected to an internet, none of that. DOD told Mark, well, email us the book. And Mark was like, fuck no, I'm not going to allow my client to email you a book that you're going to deem classified after that.
Yeah.
So we double wrapped the book. We met the DOD guys in the Pentagon parking lot. We gave them a double wrap manuscript, and we said, okay, we're waiting for you. There was emails going back and forth between Mark and their lawyer. So that was August of 2021. That's when we gave him the book. Till like June of 2022, we haven't heard anything. Like, no, not yet. No, we don't know. Then I was like, hey, Mark, if we don't have any other options, let's just sue them.
Yeah.
So Mark was like, okay, we have a publication date, blah, blah, blah. We have all the right things. So Mark took it to court. When we sued them, then the judge said, okay, let's give him a timeline and go back and forth. So we went back and forth till September of 2022. So that's a year and a month. This is when we got, and this is by a lawsuit, by all of these things that to push them to get us the book back with their final verdict. We got the book in September, so there was a lot of redaction. So Mark, being a lawyer, he's like, hey, just continue with the lawsuit. You gotta tell us why those things are classified. And I said, no, I don't want to do that. I want to sit with them and we can talk with their security guys and go over it. So an agreement happened. So I met them in September of 2022. We sat for about 4 hours. We went over each page, each picture, each redaction, the title of the book, what the citations in the bottom. Some stuff got redacted. So we went over all of these things. So we went over every page. We reached an agreement on everything. Some stuff, I said, you know what, guys, you're absolutely right. I overlooked that. Some stuff I don't think it's classified, but I did respect their opinion, so I took it out. Some stuff I rewrote it the way exactly how they told me, so I had. Then after we finished all of these things, I went back, rewrote everything the way how they want it. We sent it back to them for approval. It got approved. With some stuff got taken out, just totally got taken out.
Yeah.
Some stuff got taken out, and some people, when they read and they're like, okay, this is the order here doesn't make any sense. But again, it's either violating or, and this is like to protect really the guys who are still doing the mission.
Right.
So it's either violating and telling you a really good story, or telling you a balanced story without violating any classification.
How has the unit responded to the publication of the book? As you said, you're really the first operator, unit member, to write a memoir like this.
So that's a very good question. Officially, the unit did not respond to anything. They did not. I did not hear anything from anybody. I'm assuming, like unofficially, guys reached out to me, appreciated that, and guys understood. Like I didn't do it for glory because I didn't use my name. I didn't do it for money because I'm donating, and the guy and the organization I'm donating money to, they know. So the proceeds came from the book so far, went to an organization supporting veterans. Mm-hmm. Not all of it. We have another immigrant supporting group that we put in money. Legal immigrants, so people don't get freaked out. But we, as far as like, an official response from the unit, I haven't gotten anything. No. I don't know, like I wasn't one of the guys like who's pissing people off in the unit. So if people decide like, hey man, fuck that guy, I don't think it will go very well because again, I spent my time there. I served with honor. I respected everybody. I never said anything bad about anybody.
Yeah, I mean, when when the book was first coming out, asking around about you, getting the Hall file, we heard superstar, like we heard you had a great Hall file, and
well, thank you. I'm sure some guys don't like me, but this is what I was saying before. So there are guys, I mean, no matter what, there are people who will disagree with you. You went through your book. You could write, you could actually buy somebody a cup of coffee. And if he doesn't like you, he's going to be like, that fucking coffee you gave me was too hot, it burned my tongue.
Yeah.
And if somebody likes you, you could shoot their dog and be like, hey man, Jack had a bad day.
Yeah.
He shot my dog, but I know where he's coming from. So, and then you have people in between. So if you're gonna try to please everybody,
Yeah.
sell ice
Yeah.
cream. Abraham Lincoln said, if I read everything somebody wrote about me, I'm not gonna have time to govern, so I don't read any.
Yeah.
So I've learned from those things, like I'm not gonna try to please anybody, and the unit knows, the guys in the unit who know me, they know that I did not do this to harm anybody, and I definitely did not do this to cash in.
Yeah.
Do we have questions for Adam?
We do. I just want to cover one other really important kind of concept of this book. You are an immigrant, and you came to the military didn't recognize initially you for your talents and your abilities, and then all of a sudden, you end up in this unit where you are one of the few people who can actually do what you can do because of how you look, because of your native language ability. What do you think about how the military handles that now? Like, I know some of these units now, they're like, oh, we'll just get guys here and we'll teach them the language. Like, do you think the military's have they gotten better? Have they gotten worse?
So I've been like out of the military now for about 8 years. So I'm not sure, but I'm not seeing, I still see, and I think it's more psychological, it's like people feel comfortable with people who look like them.
Mm-hmm.
So I still feel, are we doing a good job? There is always room for improvement. There is always that we can actually improve what we're doing. There was a program back then called Stripes for Skills.
Mm-hmm.
So Stripes for Skills is going to somebody who speaks a language to bring him in after 2 months after basic training, 2 months after they graduate, I think, they put E5 on them. And that was basically to target certain languages that
Yep,
were
I
very
remember
short
that.
from the military. So the goal was to target, at that time was Arabic and Korean and Chinese, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And they ended up with a lot of Spanish speakers. So again, the military did not, I think still the military doesn't do a good job.
Mm-hmm.
Just from me talking to people in the
Yeah.
immigrant community, when I tell some, like till now, there are guys who served in the military, immigrants, especially Arab Americans, who are ashamed or afraid, not ashamed, sorry, afraid to tell their own community they were in the military.
Yeah.
Because they'll be like, you are a sellout, you are this, you are that. And I'm like, well, these guys served his country. So there are guys who reach out to me from that community who are like, we are extremely proud of you writing a book. You spoke what we wanted to say. And giving these guys a voice.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the more we do, and so the military has a recruiting issue. I'm like, and what the fuck are you doing about it?
Right.
Oh, yeah, we didn't meet our numbers because we're going to recruit from the same high schools, in the same communities, in the same cities, in the same towns, recruit the same people. Well, you have a whole legal immigrant community that you're not tapping into.
Right.
And if you do, it's not just you're gonna have, and again, diversity here is not free lunch. Diversity here is like giving everybody the same opportunity, whether he's green, brown, or black.
Right.
And you will benefit a lot from them because I don't think you're having a war in Alabama between us and Alabama. I mean, it's, so if I'm recruiting people from Alabama to spy on Alabama,
Yeah.
you're gonna lose. You might wanna build that more. So I think we still have a bit more to go.
Yeah.
I was, in every unit I served in, I was the only guy who looked like me.
Yeah.
Again, I used to hang out with the Hispanic guys because sometimes it was safe for me because I'm like, okay, I don't want people to know I'm Arab. I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, I was like, it's just safer to tell them I'm Hispanic.
Yeah.
And the accent I have made me like, oh yeah, this guy speaks Spanish. Habla español, I'm like, poquito. Let's just keep going. So those are the things. But I think you need to have a good environment for people like me to feel comfortable joining, and you need to do a better job in recruiting.
It's also, I mean, I hate to like make it so trivial, but it's also
an important PR message to American people who have a tendency to believe that cultures are monolithic, and that people from different areas are only going to be loyal to those areas or to those things, that there can be a blend of cultures, and that there are lots of people, and maybe not necessarily like from the U.S., but like from the Philippines. We have a huge history of serving, Filipinos serving in the Navy and things like that. That it's not the issue that people think it is.
I agree with you. I mean, to the point, honestly, speaking of we have a lot of Filipino veterans.
Yeah.
To the point the VA opened the hospital in the Philippines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how many Filipino we have. During the Japanese American community.
Yeah.
They served in the military. Like, we have all of these things, and again, to a lot of, I travel a lot, and it's extremely interesting when I'm flying and I have like an older, no, I don't mean anything against anybody, but an older white guy sitting next to me, and he's having a conversation, and initially he's like, "Where are you from? What you do?" And I see that reluctancy in the discussions.
Mm-hmm.
And then, "Yeah, I'm retired from the military." He's like, "Which military?" I'm like, "The U.S. military." "What did you do?" And then the conversation changes. But that shock I get in people's faces, that when I say I'm retired U.S. Army guy, it doesn't, even overseas when I tell people, but it doesn't click.
Yeah.
It's like, because
Yeah.
they're not expecting that, which worked extremely well for me when I was in, I didn't have to tell anybody.
Yeah,
Right.
They're expecting a guy that looks like John Cena or
Right.
one of the the recruitment poster. type
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
My neighbor, when I was living in the Maryland, Northern Virginia area, was a retired Air Force guy. When they were doing my 5-year update for my clearance, they went to ask him about me. And the guy, the whole time, I'm a guy who don't go to work in certain times. I'm living in a decent house. I go to work sometimes just like you, Jack, now, and wearing shorts and flip-flops. So the guy in his mind, and I look Hispanic, I must be a drug dealer. I swear, he thought I was a drug dealer. And he saw me in my backyard one time smoking hookah. He's like, "That's it. He's a drug dealer.
Right.
He's a junkie."
Right.
So when they were doing my 5-year update and they asked him, and they told me that, they were like, "Your neighbor had no clue that you actually work for the government. And that's why he was avoiding you." And I'm like, it worked. It does help me. It did help me sometimes. But at a certain time too, and that's why I read the book, I'm like, people need to know.
Yeah.
There are people who look like me.
Right.
Yeah.
Who served.
Yes.
Who actually were part of the solution, not the problem.
Right. Let me get to the questions real quick here. M. Corbin, thank you very much. Way to rep true American values out there, and best wishes on your work addressing operator syndrome. Thank you for becoming an American citizen. Also, shout out to Blaze for Brothers. Love my knife. Do you want to say anything about operator syndrome?
Yes. So a lot of people actually, PTSD it became like, people are okay with it, people are not okay with it. People try to blame guys who are applying for VA, for PTSD. But the first time I've heard about operator syndrome was like a few years ago, like maybe 2 years ago. And I was talking to somebody, and he explained it to me better. It's like, guys, like, both of you guys were Rangers. So when you are in that environment, your adrenaline is just kicking all the
Right.
time. You basically are a guy who's driving on the fifth gear all the time, 24/7. And you feel if you get your foot off the gas, you're gonna get killed. So you do that for 10 years, 20 years, 15 years, whatever, 5 years. And then you get out, but your brain doesn't operate like, hey, get your foot off the gas.
There's some research that it like burns out your endocrine system.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you have your foot on the gas still going, and then to add to that, a guy who came from our community, especially if you have a clearance, it used to be like, until now, I'm sure, like, guys were like, don't be fucking weak, man.
Yeah.
Just be strong.
Right.
So what I want people to know is, like, it's not, and I think, again, the operator syndrome is the guys who are going, and that could be a guy who's in the 82nd Airborne Division, it could be in it could be in any unit, but when you are at war for 20 years, whether you are deploying in the regular Army unit or a special operation unit, you are on alert 24/7. And then when you retire, they expect you to flip that switch.
Yeah.
Hey man, switch is off now. I'm good. Well, I've been looking for that switch for the last 8 years.
Yeah.
I couldn't find it.
Yeah.
There is no switch.
Yeah.
Coming to you guys. So I drove around in the morning, and I checked the place, and I'm like, here's the door, here is this. That's why I
Yeah.
drove in you in the morning.
Yeah.
So you look at all of these things because you're always on alert.
Yeah.
I think the military have to do a better job on, or do some research on teaching us where to find the switch to flip it off.
Yeah.
Because when it's on, it's exhausting.
It is exhausting.
It's very exhausting.
And it's interesting too because, talk about post-traumatic stress, like for years I would have told you I didn't have post-traumatic stress because there's no intrusive thoughts, there's no occurring event that I can't get out of my mind. And that's, I think, what people traditionally think of when they think of post-traumatic stress, right? Is the event, the thing that I just can't get rid of. But operator syndrome explains, along with all the blast injuries and TBI, all that stuff, but it explains a lot more how, you may not have like recurring memories or intrusive thoughts or anything else like that, but the toll that it takes over time and puts you in that same sort of state.
And you feel tired because,
Yeah.
like, again, you were a guy who was sprinting for the time that you were in the military. When we were at war, we're sprinting. So you are a guy who's sprinting. You are a guy who comes back from a deployment and you get a sprint again to a deployment.
Yeah.
You are a guy that one time I came back from a deployment, and without mentioning the guy's name, we had a troop commander who a lot of guys didn't think very highly of him. The reason he was redeploying me the next day, because I'm still packed. He's like, the guy did not unpack yet. And I'm like, that's not a fucking good reason to deploy.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so you are a guy, and then, hey man, you're going in this mission because we're gonna catch Bin Laden this time. So you're not gonna say no to that. Then you deploy a deployment. So again, you are a guy on the 5th gear the whole time, and then you're tired, but you don't know why.
Yeah.
Your brain is going. You can't sleep well. You don't know why. They kept fucking giving you mefequine. They give you all of these different medicine when you deploy. They giving you tons of vaccines.
Your cases of Red Bull.
Yeah.
cases of Red Bull.
Yeah. Dip. Yeah.
Whatever gets you going.
Yeah.
They used to give us Ambien when we're flying.
Yeah.
So when we land there, we are on that. We just hitting the ground running.
Yeah.
So you do that for years, and you're special.
Yeah.
You're very special.
And on top of that, though, are also the your own internal feelings, the guilt if you're not there with your guys, the sense of duty that keeps you driving forward. Like a lot of it is also like self-inflicted.
Correct. It's self-inflicted, but that's what I was saying. So you're special by being in the game, and then all of a sudden you're no longer in the game.
Yeah.
But your brain
Still is.
Yeah.
still is.
Yeah.
You didn't process that I'm out of the game.
Yeah.
So I really hope they can find that switch and tell us where it's at so we
Yeah.
can turn it off.
That's fantastic, man. Thank you. Semper Fi EDC guy, thank you very much. Thanks for the awesome guest. Can you ask him how difficult it was for him if he had to integrate with big Army, Navy, etc. on certain missions without telling them who he really is?
So I was very lucky. I never had to integrate with a big army other than in Iraq. Actually, we went, and I think 4th ID were there. A SIGINT unit from 4th ID were there. So we went try to basically coordinate with them. And then I was trying to tell them how to use the equipment, how to do that, without telling them who we are. But we had this weird looking badge that gave us access to different areas, so they knew we were special. All of them were Russian speakers in Iraq. So we were like, okay, guys, you might need an Arabic speaker with you. So we were helping them. But we never really had to do that in a lot of details. There was some stuff with the Navy. Luckily, when we went, we were there as civilians. Because Navy is very, we went on a aircraft carrier. So we can eat, actually, with normal people. We didn't have to eat
Yeah.
in different areas.
Yeah.
But usually those commanders at those units, they know who we are and what we're doing, so they facilitate things.
Yeah.
but they integrate them with big army. Luckily, I didn't have to do that in a lot of details.
Semper Fi, I'm actually not the question. I'm not going to ask him the question, and the only reason I'm not going to is, well, it's just for, you know, because whether you say yes or no, the question is whether you know somebody, and whether you say yes or no, like I would, we'll leave, you know, connections or non-connections out there in the in the ether. But thank you for the donation, and if you have another question, we're happy to ask that. Let me see. Dee, was there anything on Patreon?
No.
I think that is it then. Yeah, that's it. So everybody, please buy and read this book. Buy it for friends. Buy it for enemies. Buy it for everybody you know. You know, it's great. And even if you're not somebody who is, I mean, if you're watching the show, then you're probably into, you know, military special operations. But even if you're not, it's really a fantastic personal story.
Thank you. I wanted to thank you guys. So I listened to your podcast. I got to know you guys before I came, so I feel it's unfair. So you guys read my books, so you know recon. But I did my recon. I did my homework. Listening to your book, actually, just you going through what you went through. First of all, I mean, like, for somebody who's like 20, 21 years old, in charge of like a ranger team, and doing an ambush and all of these things, and I'm like, holy shit.
It's a little surreal looking back on it.
Yeah, and I'm like, man, I joined the army when I was 25, and I think if I was in your place, I would have totally failed. And I'm like, it's not just the guy talked about, like, he's like, okay, you know, I did this and I went through it, and now you teach him people, or you're talking about it, and you wrote it in your book, and you talk about it, so it means a lot to most likely a lot of people, more than you think.
Yeah, thank you. No, I mean, when you write something, you know, you hope it connects with people, and it's very interesting to see how it connects with different people in different ways. You know, like my book, half of it is my military time, half of it is working in journalism, conflict journalism. And sometimes the military people actually really relate to the second half, the journalism stuff, more than the military, or vice versa. So it's very funny to see, you know, and I'm sure you've experienced it too with your book, that, you know, when you write something and put it out there, different people connect with it in different ways, right?
Yeah, and the other thing, I mean, you put in your life out there.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't realize, like, when you write a memoir, you actually telling people, look at me, I'm standing naked.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm seriously, I mean, I'm standing naked. You know, I was the guy in Egypt who couldn't buy black shoes. A lot of people don't want to admit, like, those struggles they went through. But you're doing these things to hopefully open the door for other people to say, you know, this poor kid came from Egypt and he was able to retire as a sergeant major in one of the most elite units, then I can do it too.
Yeah.
So that's what. And then I think I talked about this too. I was in Jersey where I got robbed and somebody hit me on my fucking head with a beer bottle. And I'm like, man, Dave, I got something in common with you.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm like, but you got hit with a brick more than me, and I didn't pass out.
Well, you're stronger than I am.
No, I got for me, it was just a beer bottle. So I was like, huh. But you don't know, honestly, how much we have in common till you start talking to each other and opening up and having this conversation. So people, like, for a lot of the military guys or young guys, I'm like, just open up. You'll realize how much we have in common, more than you think.
Yeah.
And then we are stronger together than let's just, you know what, when I see you in the street, you know what, you look different than me, so I'm not going to talk to you. And I look different than you, so you're not going to talk to me. So those are the things. And I do appreciate, like, the opportunity to be here and talk to you guys.
You're welcome back anytime. And let me just tell people out there, please check out our Patreon if you haven't already. There's a link down in the description. And if you subscribe to us on the Patreon, you get all these episodes ad-free, and you support the channel. We really appreciate it.
And Adam's book, the link is in the description and in the show notes.
To Adam's book down below as well. The Unit by Adam Gamal with Kelly Kennedy. Hope you guys will go and check out the book. And on Friday, we're going to have a pre-recorded episode with Command Sergeant Major Mike Adams, retired Special Forces guy. Did all kinds of cool stuff through his career. So you'll see that on Friday. Adam, anything else you want to put out there? Anything you want to shout out before we roll out today?
I want to thank Kelly Kennedy, and I want to thank the publisher. So Kelly Kennedy, I met her through somebody else who was asking me to self-publish. And she and I, like, when we talked, and I was like, so she's the one who introduced me to the agent.
Mm-hmm.
The agent found the publisher. The publisher took a gamble on me. This is again, it's the first of a kind book. So I want to thank them for that. And then I have received tons of messages from people who are very supportive, who encourage me. One of them is here. So, but I did receive a lot of things from, like, good things from people. Obviously, I received a lot of hate messages as well, which is okay.
Really?
Yeah, I got some good hate messages, but
Nasty grams?
nasty grams, people criticizing me, people calling me a liar, which is fine.
Yeah.
I knew exactly what I was writing the book for.
Yeah.
I was writing the book for a specific kind of audience. Hopefully, the message came across. To balance between classified information and telling a story is not easy.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's like being in that fine area in the middle.
Yeah.
But honestly, I wanted to thank everybody. I wanted to thank unit leadership, current and former leadership, who did not shut the book down.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if they tried or not, but they didn't.
You know, you mentioned the hate mail. I also want to tell people, when you read the book, please leave a comment on Amazon or wherever you buy it. One of the things I noticed was that the ratings are lower than what the book deserves, and it's because people want an in-depth look into the special unit,
Which you're not able to do.
Which you're not able to do, and they don't understand. This is a memoir. This is about you, and you know.
Yeah, hopefully people respect that too and understand it.
Yeah.
And people who understand that,
Yeah.
they understand like it's an honorable thing.
Yes.
For me, but I could have, if I wanted to, I could have just wrote everything without going to publication
Exactly.
and put it out there and then harm everybody who's operating
Exactly.
now, shut the unit down most likely. So that's not the intent. But
Yeah.
the intent is like to give you a glimpse of what's out there. In addition to, the book is not political.
Right.
So some people is like, well, this guy criticized that Trump administration, but did not criticize the Biden administration.
Right.
The book has been in fucking review forever.
Right.
So if the book actually, I'm personally, when I talk to people, I do criticize the Biden administration for how we pulled out of Afghanistan. I don't think it was the right way, but the book was in pre-publication review.
Yeah.
So it's not, I'm not with or against any parties. I'm obviously, I'm more into the left side than the right side.
If you guys buy this on Kindle, Adam said he will update the book with each administration and his critique. I'm just kidding. That's not true.
Yeah. So, but yeah. So people reading, getting the book, looking at, I'm kicking every door, I'm killing everybody.
Yeah.
Every brown guy.
Yeah.
We've met in the way
I
we
killed
killed.
100
Yeah.
Iraqis
Yeah,
by
exactly.
myself. Yeah.
There I
That's
was.
not.
Yeah.
That's not it. The book is more of a, let's work together and let's have a glimpse of that, and let's look at the different communities and how we can do better together.
It's interesting too, because like you talking about your experiences overseas, it really calls back when we had Jack Devine on the show, and him saying that U.S. intelligence needs a new path, a new sort of class when it comes to you just, especially with technology the way it is, you can't just have a bunch of white people working out of the embassy and expect to gather the type of
Yeah.
intelligence that you need these days.
Yeah, I mean, with the world is changing.
Yeah.
And if people don't realize that, then they are dinosaurs and they're gonna
Yeah.
go away.
Yeah.
But the world is changing, and we need to be moving with how the world is changing. Just an anecdote that I used to say when I was in the military. We have all of these military manuals on how to do everything.
Yeah.
How to tie your shoes, how to write a memo. And what I used to tell people, I'm like, do you think the 9/11 guys wrote a memo to bin Laden saying, hey, we're going to go do 9/11. And Bin Laden grabbed the memo and then folded it in half. And he's like, your signature block is not in the center.
Right, right.
And you're not 5 spaces between
you
the
used
last.
Arial font.
Exactly. So I'm like, that's how they are operating. And if you want to defeat the enemy, you got to understand the enemy's language.
Yeah.
And what I mean by language here is like in general, not
the
not
culture of
the
how they
culture.
operate. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's how we're gonna win. But if we're gonna stay divided and say, you know what, you wear shorts and I don't like shorts, and I'm not gonna deploy with you because you wear shorts.
Right.
Then we're not gonna win.
Right.
So if we wanted to win, we gotta do a lot better.
I'm gonna
together,
get Greek lizard camo shorts for the entire army. Send them over there.
But thank you guys. Really
Thank you,
appreciate
buddy.
it.
Thank you, Adam. So guys, we'll be back Friday with Sergeant Major Mike Adams. And Adam, thank you again for coming by.
thank you.
Hope to see you again soon.
Definitely.